Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sports Clichés podcast. This is episode 18. I'm Craig. That's Jay. Uh, we took a couple weeks off after the Super Bowl, relaxed, and then, boy, oh boy, did sports happen over the last couple weeks. So we're here to talk about it with you. We
Yeah,
got football stuff to talk about, baseball, everything in between. How you feeling, Jay?
doing good, man. Doing good. Yeah, no, a couple weeks. You got Super Bowl ending, you got Olympics and that sort of thing. Pretty jam packed with stuff. Um, Nice little couple weeks with Elden Ring, kicking back. Trying to get back in the swing. Checking out my dubs, my sharks. One. Well, actually, both have been a little rough from time to time here for both teams, but we'll get into that later now. But yeah, what a week to come back. We got quite an offseason developing here in the good old uh, the good old pros league. The NFL is really popping right now as far as some big name players moving from their pretty well known spots into in some new places. And I suppose we started the week. I believe we started the week with Wilson, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
Russ. I mean, so technically the Rodgers extension, I think, was the first thing to came out.
okay, yeah,
But they came out right about the same time.
yeah.
But yeah, Russ going to the Broncos. Boy, did the Seahawks get a haul for him. It's
Yeah.
the trade, as far as we know, it is. Again, none of these are official yet until the new season starts on Monday, I believe. But as of right now, the trade as we know it is Russell Wilson and a fourth round pick to the Broncos for a first this year, a first next year, a second this year, a second next year, a fifth this year, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris.
Yeah. Um,
That that's a haul, but it's hard for me to believe I'm saying this, but I still look at that trade and go, Denver still probably won. It's a
I
lot, but you
yeah.
got Russell Wilson.
I've seen. I think a lot of a lot of the talking heads, that sort of thing. Things that are seeing right after that trade. I think a lot of folks had the Seahawks losing that trade for sure, and the Broncos winning it. Simply the fact that the Broncos get the one thing that you'd have to point to that they needed. They needed somebody to run that offense at the quarterback position. Um, and you'd say in this last season, absolutely, especially with a team like the Raiders being able to get in out of their very own division, the Chargers being the disappointment that they were, just barely dropping it at the end there. Uh, but Denver was right there. Denver was right there the entire way, as crazy as that was. And you got to look at that. Obviously, that defense. That defense was. It kept that team around. And you got to think that if you have a I mean, if you get a guy like Russ in there and you're able to bring that team up to a middle of the road offense, simply as that, you're not even talking about necessarily even a top 10 offense, top 15 offense to where you could reliably put points on the board every game. That's huge for this team. That's a playoff team right there. You'd say just plugging that in, even with Louis losing a guy like Fant, who I think we both really like at
Yeah,
a
I
tight
was
end
gonna say
position.
the Noah Fant inclusion in this trade really surprises me because
Yeah,
you'd figure that's the kind of guy Russ would like to have around and be a big target for him. I think Noah Fant, eh, easily top 10 tight end in this league, criminally underrated. I think at times just because he hasn't really had a quarterback to play with. This is a guy who's been putting up 700 yards consistently a season and again hasn't really had a quarterback to throw the ball to him.
yeah.
You'd figure if he had a guy like Russell Wilson back there getting him the ball, he could be a real star player for them potentially as that tight end, as that big option for them. Kind of surprised to see him involved in this trade. But I would imagine Seattle really wanted him. Obviously, they haven't had a really great tight end in a while, and it's something that potentially we'll talk about a little bit about the draft coming up. And I'm not done with my mock draft until I see some free agency stuff and stuff like that. I'm not going to make a full on mock draft here,
Right,
but I
right.
imagine with that Broncos first round pick, they're taking a quarterback there. So you'd think if they are, Noah Fant could be a guy who can help. said quarterback, who may or may not be Malik Willis, really transition into the league. It gives them a good option if Drew Lock is not your guy next year, which they might go with Drew Lock. Who knows? But that was the name I was kind of surprised to see in this. Shelby Harris is going to be a loss for that defense. Obviously, that's a big bruising defensive tackle who had 6 sacks at the tackle position last year. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Is a good DT for sure. Somebody that's going to hurt a little bit on the defensive side to lose, but I'm sure they can fill him in the aggregate. Yeah, honestly, we talked about it for a lot of the season. If you gave Denver competent quarterback play, they are probably a playoff team.
Yeah.
And they get one of the better quarterbacks in the league out of this, right? When he's healthy. Right?
Yeah.
That is the big question here with Russell Wilson. How healthy can he stay? He's had injury troubles over the last couple of years.
I think it's an interesting thing with Wilson, because I think we've talked about this previously, and this has been brought up by, I'm trying to think of the former teammate that did bring this up. It might even have been Richard Sherman at some point on his podcast, or on another podcast. But basically the idea that this whole thing behind let Russ cook, and this whole idea of primarily running your offense, not only primarily running your offense through Russell Wilson, but like to an extreme degree, to where he's throwing the ball a lot and he's having to go out and he's making plays with his feet, that sort of thing, to a point to where it became kind of bad for him. It became pretty predictable. And the argument being, I think, from Sherman in this interview was that that's exactly what you don't want out of Russ. This is a guy, and I kind of agree with him. If you keep Russ to like a 25, 30 passes a game, to where he's obviously still running plenty of offense in that scenario, but you put a competent running game behind him, which Denver has shown they can put that together for him. For sure. Obviously, a defense that's going to aid you in the time of possession battle. And in those times where you need it and you're able to put him out on a bootleg, a play action, you don't make it so obvious, that's when Wilson will be dangerous. I mean, that's been shown. He's been kicking the shit out of the Niners for seasons, and it didn't matter how good or bad that team was. He was still able to do it against the Niners. So I agree with you. He's still a top quarterback talent in the league, even though Seattle didn't look it this year. And this is really one of those interesting scenarios to where, like, it's kind of cliche to say it, but this is sports cliches. I feel like both teams really did win in this trade, honestly. I know there's kind of has to be generally a winner and a loser to some varying degree. I think a lot of people were burying Seahawks on this one, as far as,
I wouldn't go that far at all.
but I was seeing literal A grades for
me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But as far as, the talking heads that I was talking about before, they were giving the Broncos the A grade. Hey, you guys got your guy. You're going to be able to plug him in. You're going to be a playoff team. And they're giving the Seahawks like a D for this trade.
Ooh, no.
And
I'd go
I
closer
agree.
like an A, B minus, maybe even a B
It's
for the Seahawks. They get 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders. They got a solid tight end in Noah Fant. They get a defensive tackle who steps in day one, immediately makes their defensive line better. No, I'm not sold on Drew Lock. I don't think anybody is. But at the end of the day, the Seahawks got a decent haul out of this, right?
Yeah.
And when you're trading a franchise quarterback, you're never going to get perceived value, because the perceived value of a franchise quarterback is always ridiculous, right? Like, they were never going to get 5 first-round picks for him. No team's going to do that. So, you get 2 firsts, 2 seconds. Noah Fant, by the way, is 27, I believe. He's still on the better... Oh, no, never mind. He's 24. He's on the better end of his career. There's a lot more of Noah Fant to come.
Sure.
Shelby Harris is only 30. You still got a few good years of Shelby Harris left in you if you decide to keep him. I'm not sure if the Seahawks are going to decide to keep him or they're going to look to flip him.
Yeah.
But you still got a few good years of Shelby Harris in you if you want that. They got a lot of good pieces out of this trade, but you're never going to get the perceived value of Russell Wilson, and I think that's the problem here.
Yeah, I mean,
for a lot of people.
I would say yeah, and if you're just looking at it, obviously from like a player to player standpoint, we like Fant. I think they got a good tackle as well in the deal. Locke is going to be kind of the head comparison. That's who you have taking snaps for you now as the Seattle Seahawks. the
We'll
thing is,
see.
the thing is, how much does it really move the meter for you, bad or good? For a team like the Broncos, I think it's a addition of Russell
Yeah,
Wilson is enough to make you a playoff team, and that's really all you're really looking
maybe
for.
not even maybe, probably even the second best team in that division now. Right.
Yes,
The Chiefs, I still think are number one.
Chargers,
Uh,
Chargers have made their moves too.
yeah, we'll talk about the
We'll
Chargers,
talk
but the
about them in a little
Chargers and
bit here.
Broncos right now, I think, are jostling for that number two spot. Raiders have fallen way behind the pace already this offseason.
Although,
The
no,
Raiders, listen, the Raiders would have lost out to the Broncos in that playoff race if the Broncos had competent quarterback play last year. I truly believe that. That Broncos defense was unbelievable. They just needed one of their quarterbacks to play admirably for a few of those games,
yeah.
and that 7-10 becomes 10-7 in their playoff team.
I mean, yeah, most likely. But it is that division is that division's insane. I mean,
It's stacked.
it's you know, I think last season you're talking about a lot of people looking at the NFC West. That's probably one of your toughest divisions out there. But no doubt the AFC West was right there with them. Obviously, the records kind of go to show and how valuable those late season games were. You know, you're going deep into it in week 17, 18 of the season. And obviously, you talk about finale with the Chargers and Raiders. You know, that comes down to, you know, bad coaching or what have you,
A
time
bad
management. And
timeout call.
you know, who knows,
Yeah.
you know, the what it looks like. You know, you put the Chargers in the playoffs there, and there's some potential, I would say. But beyond that, but on the other side of it, as far as moving the needle, I mean, what did you have last year with the Seahawks? They had a really rough stretch of games, even with Russ in there. Granted, he did get quite dinged up at times there, so he was out for a little bit of time. Wasn't 100% in coming back. He definitely came back very fast from the injury that he did have, and you know, what would you gain by bringing Russell Wilson back? Um,
Especially if he wasn't liking it, right? Like if Russ was looking at the Seahawks going, I don't really want to go through this rebuild we're going to have to go through, bringing him back doesn't accomplish anything, right? Like the Seahawks still have bigger issues they need to deal with, right? There's a lot of issues in Seahawk land right now, and I don't think they were going to spend the money they were going to need to spend to fix that this offseason.
it's just an interesting place they're in. They're very
Yeah.
much like they're not really in a position, I feel, to go into a complete tank mode.
Yeah, I think they
And
are now.
now, yeah, and now the outside looking at it, like it's looking like where are you going to pick up wins here?
Yeah.
It's gonna.
Especially like I said, they brought in Shelby Harris. I wouldn't be surprised if they flip Shelby Harris. Right. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of trades like that happen where, some of the older guys get moved on. They obviously they released Bobby Wagner,
Yes.
right?
So that comes after, yeah.
That's another one. So I mean they are looking like now they're in full on rebuild mode. Um and yeah, I think this just facilitated that. The Seahawks were going to be in a weird spot if they didn't do this, where they weren't good enough to contend, but Russell Wilson's too good of a quarterback to lose that many games to where you could start to develop draft picks and get into a good spot. And you don't want to be stuck in that 500 position where, you're 7-10, 8-9, outside of the playoffs, but not really losing enough to get into good draft position. I think this is the right move for the Seahawks.
Well, yeah, but it will remain to be seen. I mean, it's tough to even really grade it now. Obviously, you could look at first rounders and you could put a perceived value on them, but what do they actually use those for? What you know are those going to be just ammunition for them to move on to different players? They obviously they're in a bit of a cap situation, but they're relieving a lot of that obviously with the moves they have made. And I we'll see with a guy like Drew Lock. I mean, probably just going to be one of these guys that drafted fairly high, gets the opportunity to start. First place doesn't work out so well, and yeah, I mean, you gotta imagine if he's got a season, right? That's kind of how I feel about this. He's got a season probably to
If
get
that.
it done in
I'm gonna
Seattle.
be honest with you. Like I said, I think that first round pick this year goes on who's your favorite quarterback. They've just traded up into the position where they get to pick their favorite quarterback on the board, right? And I think that's what the Seahawks are gonna do. Now, there's no out and out clear number one starter right away guy in this draft class. I think there is a guy who's got the highest floor, and that's Kenny Pickett. And I think there is a guy who has the highest ceiling, and that's Malik Willis. And there's a few options of in between guys there, guys like Desmond Ritter and Matt Corral. They get the chance to pick who's your favorite, right? And I honestly think it's Malik Willis. I think, interestingly enough, projecting him out of college, watching him play, he reminds me of a slightly faster Russell Wilson. So the fit makes sense, right? If they draft Malik Willis this year, locks in a QB battle through preseason to even get that starter job, right? And I don't know. I haven't seen anything out of him that makes me think this guy can go out there and win a battle like that if Malik Willis is ready. Like a lot of people seem to think he is.
Yeah, I mean that's good. It's you get to tell real quick. I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily something that gets decided immediately either. Unless it's obviously injury could become a factor, but besides that, I just gotta think that Locke will have the opportunity to start to begin the season, unless preseason goes really fucking tits up for him and Willis or whoever,
Yeah,
if they end up drafting somebody, is able to step in and you know uh, provide that for him. It's I'm interested to see where, because they got a lot of holes. I mean, you put anybody back there right now, that O line, yikes, man. I
yeah,
mean, anybody back there is going to get killed. So I don't know if you would necessarily even want to, draft a quarterback and then put him behind that right now. So I think you might use Drew Lock as a guy to kind of buffer this for a year.
perhaps.
In the division that you're in right now, you got the Super Bowl champs, you got the first half regular season demons in the Arizona Cardinals, and the wild card, I guess right now is really the Niners. And if what's Trey Lance going to be, because that's what it looks like right now. I think the idea that um, you know guys like Rodgers or Brady or whatever, some fantastic vet was going to go to the Niners, was a fun little thought, but I don't think really based in any kind of realism as well. Um, so I suppose you'd be looking at potentially being able to jump the Niners or something like that for maybe third or so, or second, depending on how you rate Cardinals Niners. Um, but yeah, it's a killer division right now.
Yeah,
So what are you gonna do? And then on the flip side, for the Broncos, it's just you gotta you gotta take the opportunity while your defense is this good,
agreed.
because you don't really get that too often. You don't
No,
really get really locked down defenses like the Broncos had. So I hope that they're able to turn it around. It's going to be a crazy division. I mean, for the NFL, they got to be pretty pumped that they have. For every NFC East that there is in this league, there's a division.
there's an AFC West that
Exactly, and
is
that's
just full of sharks.
that's 8 games. Or four, or sorry, way more than 8 games. That's 16 games between these teams. Just
Yeah,
talking, just absolute slugfest. So that's gonna be
yeah.
fun. Um,
I will say for the Broncos, they've got to get to adding some weapons. because I love Cortland Sutton. He's fantastic. Jerry Judy's been a bit of a roller coaster ride at times, and you just traded Noah Fant. I know they like KJ Hamler, but he
Yeah.
hasn't shown much in the NFL, right? Obviously, he had a great preseason, started off with a couple nice games this year, and then tore his ACL.
Right.
But the weapons game there
Yeah.
isn't big around Russ,
Yeah.
right?
They gotta like him though. They gotta like him because there's no way you give up a guy like Noah Fant if you didn't like the guy who was back behind him. So there has to be
Well,
something
Hamler's
there.
another wide receiver,
Or
so
yeah, okay, yeah. I suppose you're not wrong, but I think the way that they've used Fant as well isn't a traditional tight end as well.
yeah, no,
He's tight end by
been
designation, but
yeah,
not
he's
really
been
by
more of a
play.
flex tight end.
Yeah,
I'll agree with that. But I mean, looking at their tight end depth chart now, interestingly enough, the guy who's his incumbent is Albert Okwuegbunam. I can never pronounce that guy's name. Albert, my boy Albert, who was the tight end at Missouri for Drew Lock.
there you go. Wow, wow.
Um, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah,
That's very
I
funny.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised to see them maybe dip into free agency a little bit, look to add a weapon or two, maybe even at that tight end spot. We've mentioned this tight end class is insane,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I would not be shocked if the Broncos try to put themselves as suitors for one of those big tight ends, right? Whether it be Eric Ebron or somebody along those lines. There's 10 to 15 tight ends on the market right now that can be difference makers on your team. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised to see the Broncos in on at least one of them.
So you got to imagine you're going to get potentially some great value out of a second round, even dipping down into a third round, picking up a tight end here. Some real value there, and obviously, who knows? Who knows? That's such an interesting position to really evaluate, and obviously, the way it's utilized in the NFL, given specific teams, you kind of almost have change of pace tight ends as well, as much as you have change of pace running backs. The whole idea that you could have the blocking specialist sort of deal along with your pass catching tight ends, your flex essentially into a wide receiver kind of guys. That will be very interesting for them. And then I kind of brought up before. They already got the running game set up for Russ there, and Russ has not had that in Seattle at all. They haven't
Not
had a
since
damn
Marshawn.
thing. I mean, yeah, you try to fill it in with guys like Carson, and at points they look all right, but over the long haul of a season, that has not been working out for the Seattle team. So yeah, again, I think this is that rare thing. We'll see what they do, obviously, with the picks and what kind of ammo what they use those for, who they even pick up with those picks. But I think a rare kind of comes out better for both sides in a way. You're probably not doing anything more in that division if you're Seattle with Russ than without. So go without, get some picks for it, and strike while the iron's hot if you're Denver. So
I think what could be interesting to see with the Seahawks in this draft is that 2023 first. You imagine it's not going to be too great. Do you use it as potential fodder to try to get another pick in this first round? That could be an interesting play as well, right? Because now you have 2 seconds this year, 2 firsts next year, 2 seconds next year.
right.
Right. Do you maybe package one of your seconds this year with that first next year that you just got from Denver, which with Russell Wilson, like I said, you imagine that's a 20s first rounder to get back up into the first round this year. If there's a guy you like, maybe speed up that process a little bit. I really think Seattle could potentially be movers
Yeah, right.
on draft day with all these picks they now have. That's another team that we could look at. But speaking of a team that just got a bunch of picks and could be movers on draft day as we move forward to the next trade. The Indianapolis Colts get what I would consider to be a surprisingly good haul for Carson Wentz.
Yep.
I know it's a second round swap this year. They didn't actually get Like they essentially traded their second rounder. But they get a third rounder next year, which becomes a second rounder if Wentz plays 70% of Washington's snaps. Spoiler alert, they're paying a lot of money for Carson Wentz. He's going to play 70% of their snaps, barring injury, which, I mean, is a Wentz thing. They swap seconds this year. They get another third for Wentz and a seventh. Washington had been rumored for a while around Russell Wilson. Do you think this might have been a panic move by them?
Um, Man, I mean, yeah, it's kind of interesting, and I think like some people have taken a look through the scope of what did the Eagles get? Yeah, right. Yeah, what did
Yeah.
the Eagles get back then as far as the swap to Indy, the 1 year experiment, and then just dishing them out for what you can. Um, I think it's although I think we would definitely both say that the Colts feel like a better general team than a team like the Broncos do. But I feel like a similar situation, a team that you just missed the damn playoffs. Somehow, some way you missed the playoffs with a what you would think is a pretty damn competent defense when you're
Yeah.
talking about guys like DeForest Buckner on your defensive side, a Jonathan Taylor on your offensive side. Good weapons as far as when Ty is healthy, right? Um,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, little freeze up on my stream
Yeah.
there. But like, and I'm trying to remember their young guy who actually ended up taking Carson's number. I'm trying to think of his fucking name, the wide receiver over there for the Colts. But regardless, like that's a team that should have made the playoffs last year, didn't, and it's like your window only remains open for so long. You got to feel with.
Were you trying to get Michael Pittman Jr. out there?
There we go, Michael Pittman. Yes, who I like.
I think Pittman's going to be great for them. I think
Shows the
Pittman,
ability to go up, get the ball, all
yeah,
the yeah, great athlete.
yeah. You mentioned it. There's a lot of wide receiver weapons out there. That's a team that's got to go get a quarterback.
Right at
You're
this
you're
point, of course. Like
you're too good of a team to not look to go out there and get a quarterback. Um, because right now at the moment their starting quarterback would be Sam Ellinger, and I don't think that's happening.
no, don't think so.
Um, yeah. Uh, I actually really like what they got for Carson Wentz. I didn't think they were gonna get that much. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but you got to understand the perceived value of Carson Wentz right now. The perceived value of Carson Wentz is he threw a 4.4 QBR against the worst team in the NFL to
Right,
cost his team a playoff spot.
right,
Right? That's the
right.
perceived value of Carson Wentz right now. You get a second and a third for that, and then swap seconds with the other team. Which I mean, that second swap, by the way, is only like 5 places.
Yeah,
It's not much. Uh, that's pretty good value for a 4.4 QBR QB. I hate this deal for the commies. I
yeah,
really do. I feel like there's so much potential QB movement out there, right? I don't think you needed to be the first one to act on Carson Wentz.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to think that they were in the talks for Wilson as well. Obviously, there had to be a lot of interest for Wilson. Um, just kind of know it, just kind of hearing the whispers that he and seeing it from the outside, just where Seattle was at, it's like, okay, that's a team, that's a guy that's
Yeah.
potentially looking to get out of there, and that's probably got to be your first guy. Now, the fact that you get a guy like Wentz coming off the board before your Jimmy G's, your Mariotas, your even
Eric Carr.
a Mitch Trubisky, even
Yeah.
like, oh, I mean, that's
No, I
tough to
take Wentz
say.
over Trubisky.
Yeah, I was about to say like it, but
Kirk Cousins could have been on the move there, right? Like, I know you haven't been big on Kirk Cousins, but surely after what you saw at a Wentz there at the end of the season, you would imagine Kirk Cousins would be a more stable pick.
yeah, and Kirk is an interesting name because that just kind of came out. I think a day or
Yeah.
two ago, I heard about whispers of the Vikings, looking to free up draft
Well,
or looking to free up cap space.
yeah, it was
That's a
weird
big
what
spot.
happened there because Kirk Cousins at the end of the season everybody thought was gone. Then they
Right.
brought in this new coach and he was like, "No, no, no, I love Kirk." And everybody internally was like, No, we love Kirk. Why would we trade Kirk? And then a couple days ago, it started whispering like they're kind of going around in secret, going, "Hey, you guys want a nice Kirk Cousins over there? We got a nicely refurbished Kirk Cousins for you."
Man.
Sounds like they're really trying to shop him around to get some cap space freed. It just felt like the QB market was so vast with players. You didn't need to be first on Carson Wentz. He had a
Yeah.
really good year in Philadelphia, followed by a pretty decent half season before he got hurt. That's a lot to put on a guy who hasn't shown anything close to that since.
Right. Yeah, and it's been dismal. It's been
Yeah.
one of the worst statistical seasons as far as that last one with the Eagles, right? And then, yeah, you brought up that performance in that game with the ability to make the
And happen.
playoffs on the line, and I hate doing it because you could point to guys like Jaworski Tart dropping an interception, and people will point out
Yeah.
that one guy, but it's a whole fucking game, right? You gotta take everything into
That's just it. The Tart play is one play in a game that I thought he otherwise played pretty well.
yes, but
This is a 60-minute game of Carson Wentz failing your team.
absolutely dropping the butt, dropping the bag.
Yeah.
It was, as a Colts fan, you're going in 2 weeks prior because before the Jags, I'm trying to think who they played. Um, you were looking like you had it wrapped up, playoffs wrapped up. You just needed to get a win in one of these two games, and one of those two games was Week 18 against the fucking Jacksonville Jaguars. You pretty much had it written. You had to have it written off that you were going to be getting into the playoffs there, and then it comes down to actually that game. It's like,
It
okay,
was
well,
the Raiders.
okay, yeah, and ups on the Raiders. The reason why they made the playoffs is because they won games like that all of a sudden.
Also not very talked about, Wentz had a very poor game in that one too, where he,
Yeah.
he only threw for 48 yards, one touchdown, two picks.
So yeah, I mean, just kind of falling off the end of the season there, and it's one of those things to where the people that will defend him, and I think there are some things to defend about Carson Wentz, but they'll point to that stat line. You're looking at 20 something touchdowns, only like 7 picks on the season or something like that. You know how many picks were dropped? So
Yeah.
many picks were dropped. The Niners could have had like a few in that game alone that he ended up winning.
27-7, by the way. 27
So
touchdowns,
a
seven
good stat
interceptions.
line, and you would look at in comparison a guy like Jimmy G who has I think a few touchdowns less and a few more picks right through a season, and you'd be like, why the hell would you prefer potentially Jimmy G over Carson Wentz given those stats? But I think you look at the play and you just actually watch him, and it's just like
Yeah.
he's not reliable in that position right now. Not like he had he showed for a bit of time there for Philly.
The year before that Eagles season that we mentioned, 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions.
Yeah,
Like, he has been that guy recently where whenever he throws up the ball, you pray a little bit that it's going to land in the arms of your receiver because it could go anywhere.
right,
And you're right. The 7 interceptions is a little bit deceiving because you look at him, especially near the end of the season. He was throwing gunslinger balls up to nobody and was getting some ridiculous catches out of Michael Pittman, out of T.Y. Hilton, out of Paris Campbell.
right,
Uh, Guys were really bailing him out on some of his throws, and I don't think Washington has that receiver core. They got Scary Terry,
right.
and that's great. But beyond Scary Terry, your receiving core is not going to bail out Carson Wentz throwing bad balls like that all the time.
I mean, what a funny position though, going to the NFC East where you're going to be playing the
Going to
Eagles
be
now
playing the Eagles
twice a year.
and Jalen Hurts, who himself has a lot of question marks around him still. I don't think anybody sold on Jalen Hurts yet either.
That's the thing, though.
So
I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's like, oh man, how much do you move the needle going from a Taylor Heineke to a Carson Wentz? How interesting is that team going to look? How different is that team going to look with him behind quarterback? I mean, you got to expect if this starts going kind of I feel almost the opposite of how it's going to go for Drew Lock over there in Seattle. I feel like Carson Wentz has an incredibly short leash here. And
Shortest leash you've ever seen.
if he
They'll go
had
back to Heineke in a second if they have to.
0-3 and he has a couple more picks and touchdowns and he's not looking good, and yeah, it's going to be Heineke back in there because why the fuck not? It's the NFC East. You just need to put in a string of a few wins together and you're probably going to be the leader in that goddamn division. You know, who knows what the hell the Cowboys are going to look like next year. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that's the only team where you could really say like, that's there's some quality there, hopefully. But
Hopefully.
good God, I mean, Washington, fucking Giants. I mean, yeah, Cowboys. Who's really even going to be close to making the playoffs outside potentially the Cowboys there in that division? So every opportunity there, I suppose. If you feel like Wentz could do it, think if he did though. Like if
It'd be a hell of a story.
he's
Go back to the
potentially
NFC.
he's potentially the second best quarterback in that division. Potentially.
Yeah, it's him or Jalen Hurts, and they're both based entirely on the potential of what they can do at their absolute best.
All right.
Right? So yeah, no, you're not wrong.
So we will see. I mean, yeah, NFC East, that's going to be probably a dogfight.
Race
And
to the bottom.
yeah,
Race to the bottom.
who
baby.
knows? Who knows? Might as well though. Kind of in a little bit more of an NFC shakeup as well. I mean, and I think this one might open up the door to be kind of the coolest one. I'm really interested in this Khalil Mack trade. Very, very
What a
interesting.
trade by the Chargers, man.
Right.
Like, we talked about it all season. That defense couldn't stop a cold.
Right.
Right? And in particular, people were running the ball down their throats. They couldn't stop the run. Everybody could run on them. Khalil Mack is a game changer on defense, both in the pass rush and in run defense. He is a very good run defender, and I think that's the underrated thing people are talking about here. Khalil Mack has been consistently a guy who breaks up running plays in the backfield. That Chargers defense needed a facelift. It needed something to give them a boost.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack is very much that kind of a guy. I am shocked the Bears did not get a first rounder in this. I'll throw that one out there as well.
I was a little surprised by that. Yeah, you'd expect a first round or a very nice bundle of some seconds or something like that.
Yeah, or at least another second in there, right?
Exactly.
A second and a future sixth. Not even a sixth this year. It's a sixth next year.
Is it conditional in any way? Can that thing move up? God, that's strange. It's just crazy. Yeah, you wouldn't have thought.
And a sixth next year.
And it's that thought. It's that thought of, God damn, if that's all it took, why the hell didn't our team fucking go out and get
I know
Khalil
he's coming
fucking
off
Mack?
Of injury.
Yeah,
and there is concern with that, but it's fucking Khalil Mack.
He's a spark plug. Like that's exactly what you're saying. Like the ability to like nice little hit of energy to that team.
Yeah.
That line, obviously, it's scary as hell. You're talking about, and what's the one thing that you really want to be able to do as well? If there was one weakness, if there was one thing that you were gonna say that would put you into the, getting to that number one spot in that division over the Chiefs, it's when Patrick Mahomes has pressure on him.
Yeah,
you start getting to him. You start getting to him. That offense, that team in general, just breaks down a little bit more. It's still obviously, it's going to be tough, but you just add that element to it. You get that much more of a pass rush. Bosa, Mack
and
on
Russell
that line.
Wilson now too.
That's, I mean, yeah.
Same thing, right? If you can get guys at these quarterbacks in your division,
yeah,
you can get them on the ground, get them feeling the game. Because the Chargers are one of those teams who should realistically be competing for the top of this division. Their offensive talent is all there.
Yeah.
Right? Herbert has shown buckets of potential. They had a little bit of a down season this year, but even still, he wasn't awful. Right? Like, the Chargers needed defensive help bad. They needed somebody who has the ability to stop the run and somebody who can get to the big quarterbacks in this division. They got both in one dude.
Yeah.
right? And it took them a second and a future sixth. That's it's a great deal by them. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Like, yeah, a little bit of high risk with Khalil Mack coming off of injury. But guess what? This isn't a guy who's had a history of injuries, right? This isn't a guy who hasn't played 16 games a lot. He played 16 games in the last 3 seasons before this one, right? Or a full season,
right.
right? Like, the guy doesn't get hurt that often. Coming off of a bad one, he's on the wrong side of 30, just. It's not like he's 38. He's just turned 31, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love this trade for the Chargers. I love it. Listen, if you're in the position the Chargers are, that second round pick ain't doing you much. Are you getting anybody in the second round who can help your team more than Khalil Mack can help your team? Hell no, you're not. So you go get yourself a Khalil Mack.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta think that. You gotta think that. Yeah, the value for that. Yeah, you could write off that sixth, and it's really that second, and that's pretty worth it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and you need every little piece. I feel in that division right now. We've talked about the order of it. I mean, the Broncos are starting to jump themselves up to there. Chargers, you would think, for a time they were looking like the number one, ended up falling off in that division, unfortunately. And the Raiders, although I will say I do like they re-signed Max Crosby today, I believe,
Yeah,
4 year,
it's a pretty
just under
decent
100.
contract. Yeah, it's a
I
pretty
love
decent
that move.
contract. 20 a little under 20 million per.
So
Um
while not a
Max
trade,
Crosby's a beast.
yeah, while not a trade, that's an awesome piece for them to kind of seal up. So yeah, you want every piece you can get there in that division right now. Great call, great signing, and yeah, if you're a fan of another team, you're wondering why the hell could we have
I,
not gone out there
like
with our.
I understand that the Bears probably wanted to move on from Khalil Mack thinking like we're just not good enough.
Yeah,
Right? And this contract, it's a big
big
contract that
contract.
we're paying them to be on a team that's not good enough. I get that. Surely you could have held on to him a little bit longer and this trade wasn't going to get any worse. A second and a sixth
Yeah,
for Khalil Mack?
it seems late. It seems late for sure.
I I when I had heard it was a couple of picks, I'm like, oh, they're gonna get like a first and a fourth or something like that and do a nice little tidy piece of business there, right? They get rid of the contract, you get a first rounder, maybe like a mid-round pick to go with it. A second and a sixth for Khalil Mack. I
Yeah,
just don't know how I feel about that.
yeah,
Like, just hold on to him for a little bit longer. See if that improves. There's no way you can't call the Chargers back the day of the draft and go, "Hey, you still want Khalil for that second and sixth?" They're gonna bite your hand off for it.
yeah, yeah. Um, I would have to say that obviously the quarterbacks, those are going to be the more talked about. We still have quarterbacks to be moved. Uh, so those will be probably the bigger stories of the offseason. But Mac has the potential to be the most impactful player, potentially. Even potentially even more than Russ for the Broncos. Even though I think Russ does make that team a playoff team, I think if if that pass rush could be anywhere as close to to the top of what we think they could be with Bosa and Mac there, uh, that's that's a potential number one seed in the AFC. That's a potential real Super Bowl contender there. You gotta think.
Really scary thing is you get to keep your first round pick in a draft where the strongest position is edge rush. You get somebody you can put on the other side of Bosa, right? So you have somebody who can maybe swap out a little bit with Khalil Mack if you're still a little bit worried about that injury, right?
Yeah,
I don't know, man. I think the Chargers could be looking really scary here. There's also a guy, Jordan Davis, who is going right around their position, who's a defensive tackle who runs a 4.55 40 and is 340 something pounds.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
If you maybe want to do that and fix your run issues, that guy could be the one. Uh, the Chargers have so many options keeping that first round pick and getting Khalil Mack, and they're going to reform that defense because their offense doesn't need anything really. Pretty much good as it is. Could you use a little bit of offensive line help? Maybe, but the kind of offensive line help the Chargers are going to want, you get that in free agency. You don't get that in the draft, right? They're going to want a veteran guy on one of the tackle slots who can kind of bring a little bit of stability for them. You get that in free agency. You don't get that in the draft. The the AFC West, man, everybody's just going out to win this fucking thing this year. And I got a strange feeling the Raiders are not. I have a very strange feeling the Raiders are going to look at what's going on around them and maybe bow out of this race a little bit and maybe potentially look to accrue draft stock.
I mean, I'm not too sure how much movement actually the Raiders going to have as far as who they're losing from this team this offseason, who they're able to bring back. The realistic, movement of Carr really going anywhere. I've heard rumors of that. Obviously, Mariota's a little bit of
I think Mariota's the one who's more likely to go because I think there's more projected value on Mariota, right? I think a
yeah,
lot of teams are very interested in giving Marcus Mariota a shot.
right.
The question is, are the Raiders interested in giving Marcus Mariota a shot? That could be where potentially moving Derek Carr comes in. If the Raiders look at Mariota and go, "This is a guy we can get something out of,"
Well,
he's still pretty young.
and what was the interesting thing is this is last season as well. Everybody thought he was going to move last season, then he re-signs with the Raiders for what seems like less money than he would have got by going to another team. So it was very surprising that he went back essentially to a backup role with that team. Maybe he had some information on writing on the wall, that sort of thing. People have talked about the potential for, them to move on from Carr and just plug in Mariota. Mariota's been in the building. He's been working that offense. He has come in and played well for your team when you put him in. Why not? So oddly enough, I think there's some decent flexibility. The Raiders actually have. They have a quarterback. I think either quarterback would get it's their fair value on the market right now. They get some. I think they get a decent return for either of those guys. Maybe you could even argue, like you said, maybe even a little bit more for Mariota than Carr, even though starter versus.
I did forget though, Mariota's out of contract, so.
Yeah.
I did forget Mariota's a free agent.
Is he a free agent? I thought he still.
No,
it was a 1 year.
He signed the 1 year last year, which makes me think he's got the world's smartest agent. He looked at last year's quarterback draft class and went, "Listen, Marcus, you're not the quarterback market's not going to be there.
It's
going to
be
next year's draft class.
Not bad.
Not a lot of perceived value there. That's where your time to strike on the market is."
Is he restricted at all?
Nope.
Or is he unrestricted? Wow, unrestricted
Fully
free
unrestricted.
agency. Because I would feel like the Raiders would be still potentially interested in retaining his services. But
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back with the Raiders and the Raiders look to move Derek Carr. I have heard that the Raiders really like Marcus Mariota.
Right.
They really like Marcus Mariota. Like I said, he's not old. He's been around a while. He is only 28.
Right.
This is a guy who has shown flashes of potential. There was 1 year with the Titans where we thought he was the next big thing at quarterback. Obviously, it fell off at the end of the day with the Titans, but there was more issues with the Titans at that time than Marcus Mariota.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I mean, we're talking about those two guys, but there's so many pieces at other quarterback positions. Your Jimmy G's, your Kirk Cousins, your hell, even finding out the news recently, fucking the buzz that's with Deshaun Watson now at this point.
Yeah,
can't help but bring that crap up. I mean,
somebody's gonna sign him because talent always wins, despite the fact that whatever's following him is following him. He's not getting a criminally charged, so as far as they're concerned, he's fine.
Right, exactly.
Great game.
And then it will be I'm trying, even when you go to that next rung with even the interest, the positive vibes I've heard around Mitch Trubisky's name again all of a sudden. So
What is that?
so quickly is it forgotten. It's the 1 year. We've talked about this before. We've talked about it
Is it the
specifically with
coaching
coaches.
thing that's
It's
happening
specifically
here?
with coaches, but yeah, exactly. This worked for players too. So you sucked as a starter. Or the last season you played. Because
Yeah.
Mitch Trubisky, obviously, he did show that he had a good year previously. Looked good. Everybody was hyped about him. Sucks. Falls off. All right, I am going to go to a good team. I am going to ride the bench. People are going to love me again because they're going to forget a year after what I looked like the year before. And I am going to get starter money I, but I mean, there's the optimism. There's the optimism around Mr. Trubisky. This guy has
Who's
shown
gonna
the ability
pay
to do
him
it.
his Nick Foles money? Let's
That's
see.
exactly it. Precisely.
At
Nick
least with
Foles. We're
Mariota,
talking about
I saw,
yeah. We're talking about this is the third chance for Mariota if he goes to another team. You know, if you
I
argue
did at
it, you
least
can
see
argue it.
Mariota play in Las Vegas and see him play well in Las
Yes,
Vegas.
it's true.
Mitch Trubisky didn't touch the field last year.
Took some
Now all of
knees. He took some knees, probably,
Now all
right?
of a sudden, everybody's like, "Man, man, it's gonna be the Saints. They're gonna try to freaking pull a Taysom Hill with Mitch Trubisky."
Oh man, yeah. So, yeah, it's even guys like
Yeah.
that still have some interest. So it's very interesting that
There's a big cycle of quarterbacks going on there. Yeah,
exactly.
that AFC West though, man, it's a dogfight the whole way, and I just wonder what the Raiders can do to stay in that fight, because at the moment it looks like they're in fourth, right? You give Denver Russell Wilson, you'd imagine that makes them better than Vegas, given that defense they have. You give the Chargers Khalil Mack, that makes that Chargers defense better. Now probably pushes them ahead of the Raiders, given how close they were in the season, anyways, and given that the big thing that was an anchor to the Chargers was that defense. The Raiders either have to do something to stay in this dogfight or kind of back out of it completely. But the worst thing you can do if you're the Raiders is get stuck in the middle. You got to commit one way or the other, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's such a loaded division that you're you have the opportunity because I would argue that the Raiders and the Broncos last season they could have looked at that season and they could have kind of folded on it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And neither really did. Unfortunately, the Broncos didn't pan out and they ended up fourth in that one. But the Raiders fucking stuck around and they won back-to-back games against, as you brought up before, the Colts and the Chargers, to just somehow make the goddamn playoffs. Then they get a first-round draw. Their first game was against the Bengals, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And for
one of the better games of the playoffs.
Exactly. Damn good game. So it's like, if you look at it from there, they're like, okay, we're a playoff team that almost beat the potential or the AFC champion.
The AFC champs. Yep.
So, do we really want to take a back seat?
No, probably not. But what I mean is, if you don't want to take a back seat, you got to find a way to make a move.
Right.
Right? Because as of right now, they are kind of starting to take a back seat, right? Like, just by the fact that everybody around them is getting better while they are not.
What do you think about, and I suppose this will kind of move right into the latest move of Amari Cooper out of Dallas.
I hate this one.
Going to the Browns. Now, what's interesting about this is that right after this, it was quickly announced that Jarvis Landry is open to seek out trades out of Cleveland. So potential for a guy like a Jarvis Landry to get out of Cleveland to go to Oakland.
That would be big for the Vegas Raiders.
That would
be big for Vegas, because I do think one of their big issues right now is they're lacking wide receiver depth, especially without Henry Ruggs.
Exactly.
Right? Jarvis Landry would be an instant game changer for them at the wide receiving core, no doubt. I'm shocked Landry wants to move out of there. I'm surprised he wouldn't look at the situation of them grabbing Amari Cooper, going, "Hey, maybe we're going for this, right? Maybe we'll bring in one of the better quarterbacks out there, maybe Deshaun Watson, and we're going for this. I want to stick around here and be a part of it." Um,
Yeah.
I know Cleveland's cap issues are bad, but they can figure out another way to make that work, I would imagine, without moving Jarvis Landry. Um, yeah, I don't love this. Like, I know Dallas was going to release Amari Cooper anyways.
Right.
Again, surely there's another way you can find the cap space you need than releasing the guy who had 890 something yards last year in a team that had no shortage of wide receivers,
Yeah.
right? You this was your wide receiver one last year. In all but two of his seasons in the NFL, he has been 1,000-yard wide receiver. Last season, where he was in a Dallas team that had about four first number one wide receivers on that
Yeah.
team, it was
You got
crazy the amount
Ertz,
of
you
talent they
got
had.
CD, yeah, you got all sorts of.
Yeah, and then the 2017 season with Oakland, where he was hurt. Those are the only two seasons he did not have 1,000-yard years. Why on earth is your first thought we need to cut this guy?
Yeah.
To the flip side, props to the Browns for going, "You're going to cut him? Why don't you just give him to us for like a fifth?"
Yeah. Fucking nothing. Another one of these trades where it's like, Jesus, that's all it fucking took. We could have had Amari Cooper on our team.
I'm looking at my team. You just restructured Matt Ryan's contract to save you so much cap
You
space.
just lost Ridley.
You just lost Calvin Ridley at least for this season. It costs a fifth to get Amari Cooper, and you weren't in on
Take
that?
a flyer, man. Take a flyer on it. Why not? But yeah. Yeah, very, very surprising how the cost ends up being. Even though I thought Amari was going to go to free, he was just going to get released. That's kind of the writing on the wall that was. But yeah, you get that trade. Yeah, absolutely. Just slide him to us for a fucking fifth.
I'm honestly
Why not?
shocked that more teams didn't try to get in on this to make the Cowboys rethink this. Because there's no way the Cowboys take this deal if other teams were involved in on that. And that is a good point. I did forget Cooper's unvaccinated.
Oh yeah, I mean, very interesting. I think for
I
the NFL in general has shown that they don't really give a shit.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big deal in the NFL. It would have been a bigger deal in, say, the NHL or
NBA.
Major League Baseball, where you have to cross the border,
Sure.
right? And you have to go into Canada, where our vaccine rules are a little bit stricter, right?
Or if you're Kyrie Irving and you're playing for the Nets.
Or if you're Kyrie Irving and you can't play in New York and you're playing for the Nets.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, in Canada, our vaccine rules are a little bit stricter. I know in the majors, if you're unvaccinated, you will not be able to cross the border and play in Toronto because you need a 14-day, it's a 14-day wait on that. I don't think it's as big of a deal when you're just traveling across the U.S.
Right.
in the NFL. I don't think that's much of a factor there, but it could have been. I mean, it's a fair point. You never know how these things are going to change year to year, especially now. It is a big thing to consider. I'm taking a flyer for a fifth-round pick on Amari Cooper. Hell yeah. Again, what am I going to get in the fifth round that will equal even half the production Amari Cooper could potentially give me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's going right in. He's your one. He's your two. I haven't heard of potential locker room issues. I guess that's one thing. You want a personality fit for some of these guys.
He's not been a guy who's bounced around a bunch, though, which is usually what you get out of guys who have been in the league long enough and have locker room issues, right? Like, he doesn't have an Odell Beckham resume to follow him, right? He was in Oakland for a while. He was a little bit brash in Oakland, but that was kind of the style of that team, right? That Crabtree, Cooper, Carr combination team. They were a little bit brash. They were talkative, but that was just the way that Oakland team was made up, right? I haven't heard much from him out of Dallas other than the fact that he is unvaccinated. I don't know, man. I'm always taking that trade every day if I'm Cleveland. I'm
Yeah.
always taking that flyer. Like, like I said, what am I getting out of my fifth round pick that's going to equal an Amari Cooper?
No, I mean, yeah, you could get lucky. There are the times where you could land a George Kittle in the fifth round, but yeah, very
But this
few and
isn't like
far
a
between.
this isn't like
Very.
a first round pick
No, it's
where
not.
my odds are quite good of getting something that is going to help me right away.
Yeah.
Right. My fifth round pick odds, like what? I'm going to get Evan McPherson or George Kittle.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
uh,
it's
Dallas might look for Evan McPherson. They cut Greg Zorline.
yeah, yeah. What Greg the Leg do deserve that? Although
Yeah,
he had that really, really
he
rough
had a rough
game.
stretch. He
Yeah,
had a rough stretch.
yeah. One
I
game
was
was awful, right? Where it was like three straight misses. Was that the back and forth? I want to say that was Cleveland. No, it was Cincy. What was that game? Because I know that it was. Which one was the back and forth where both
no,
kickers couldn't make a goddamn thing?
that was
I
Cincy
thought.
in Green Bay. It was Cincy in
Okay,
Green Bay. It was
okay, that was
it
Cincy
was
Green
Evan
Bay.
McPherson and
I could have swore Zerline was in that battle to where he was just missing field goal after field goal for a
no,
game.
it was old man Crosby and
Yeah,
Evan McPherson.
yeah,
It just couldn't hit the uprights to save their lives. And then after that game, Evan McPherson would go on to make every other field goal in the NFL season he kicked.
yes.
Um, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm biting your hand off for Amari Cooper for a fifth and a sixth swap. Like, I'm shocked that that's all it took. Because what I figured is Cleveland does that. I figured at least a couple other teams would go into Dallas and go, "Hey, like, you want my nothing for Amari Cooper?" And Dallas would look at that and go, "Let's hold on to him a little bit longer. See if we can't maybe work something out here." Kind of like what I was saying with the Khalil Mack deal, right? Like, if that's the best I can get for Amari Cooper,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold on to him at least a few more
It's
days.
I, I I suppose like the whole reason for getting rid of Cooper anyways is they're in a pretty bad cap situation, right? And
Awful.
and they have to pay Zeke over 18 mil this next season.
Yeah, that contract's gonna look like an albatross pretty soon if Zeke can't find himself staying healthy.
I mean, yeah, and what a crazy situation because you talk about the money that kind of gets wasted at some of these quarterbacks. You look at your Jared Goffs or your Carson Wentz's, and you're like, how the fuck are you dumping
Yeah,
this much money in that quarterback position that isn't really servicing that? But with the Dallas Cowboys, you're talking about a Tony Pollard. Everybody, get Tony Pollard more fucking carries
yeah,
and stop paying Zeke 18 million to do
yeah.
fucking nothing for your offense for stretches of time.
That's my thing too. Is I when I heard that they're looking to dump Amari Cooper, I was shocked Zeke wasn't first. Right, I'm shocked they weren't finding a way to get rid of that Zeke contract because honestly, the dude can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
Um, I I don't know. I don't know how much dead cap they take on if they cut him. I don't know if he's one of those contracts where if you cut him, it's a bad dead cap. I know running backs usually don't have those kind of contracts like at all. Um, I'm shocked they went to Amari Cooper before they went to Zeke because you have Tony Pollard, right? Like he's been the better running back for them recently. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. We will see, and just kind of circling back to the Brown situation. Yeah, you talked about the potential of them going out for a quarterback. I think that's obviously still on the table. You're gonna have Baker coming off that injury though, coming off surgery. Um, Baker in that interesting position to where I think he's still, he's a serviceable, he's a starter in the league, it seems. Um, Kind of in that interesting scenario, like almost a Jimmy G had, to where it wasn't looking good at the end of the season there, but both players trying to play in a severely injured state, and um, it'll be interesting to see what kind of shot Baker is given out there, kind of given what he just came off of last season. Um, I would say it'd be hard to argue that he wouldn't be able to get the ball to Amari Cooper, but he didn't seem to be able to get the ball to OBJ for quite a couple seasons there.
And
So
then we saw what OBJ did in LA too when he went to
exactly,
the Rams. And yeah, no, I don't know with Baker. I don't know what he is. He
yeah.
seems like he's better than your average backup, but worse than your average starter. And I'm not sure what that means for him, right? I'm not sure if that means a team's going to take a flyer on him. Maybe a team that is in a bit of cap trouble, but really needs a quarterback, right? Maybe you can get yourself a little bit of a cheap Baker Mayfield, fill that role. Um, I'm not sure what the move is there, but Cleveland needs a quarterback. If you're picking up Amari Cooper, uh, and now you're over the cap, you're all in, right? You don't make that Amari Cooper move unless you're certain that you've got some here, and I think the Browns do. There's a lot of pieces to like on that Browns team. You still have one of the top three running backs in the league in Nick Chubb,
Right.
right? Who has not slowed down at all. So you've got to look to kind of strike while this team still looks good. And I think a quarterback's a must. I don't think Baker can get it done. Maybe maybe I'm seeing the injuries he's had and they're swaying me a bit too much, but I don't think Baker can get it done.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. They're a very tricky team to really rate because they really didn't look good in some of their games for sure. Um, but if you take a look at the win loss and the fact that somehow you had the fucking Pittsburgh Steelers making the playoffs out of that damn division and they weren't that far off from them, it's like you just some kind of decent quarterback play a little. You're not too far off from actually making the playoffs last year. You're in that very weird limbo kind of middling state. So if you decide that, yeah, right now, if you already went out of your way to get Amari Cooper, even if you're getting rid of a Jarvis Landry, um, you got to feel like, yeah, you have an opportunity to do some work here. Pittsburgh, what their quarterback situation is going to look like going forward, that's sketchy to say the least. Baltimore is definitely, while we would expect them to be kind of your front runners there, um, the fact that you now have this Cincinnati Bengals team that all of a sudden just won your conference and came out of fucking nowhere. Um, you have an opportunity to still be a number two there in that division, though, if you're Cleveland. So,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what
If
they do.
not a number one, listen, it's not like the Bengals don't have a bunch of question marks still surrounding their team.
Right. They need
That's
an offensive
that
line.
offensive line is still one of the worst in football.
Yeah.
And
They
they're
have a
coming off of a Super Bowl.
decent draft class, right? This year, I believe offensive line is decent this year.
There is a good offensive line class. The problem is it's top heavy.
Yeah.
And unless they're going to make a move up into the top 10, 15,
Right.
it really falls off beyond that, right? And especially you're going to be drafting at the end of the first round, right? Where you're going to get a guy maybe like a Trevor Penning or a Tyler Linderbaum, who are both good prospects, but probably don't do what the Bengals need them to do on your offensive line.
Yeah.
Right. So unless you're moving up, like I don't think you'll be able to go up and get an Ekwonkwu or a Neal, but unless you're going up to get a Charlie Cross or a uh oh my God, this is why I hate blanking on names. Kenyon Green from A&M. Unless you're going up to get a guy like that, I don't see the guy who steps in day one and it's like this changes your offensive line's dynamic.
Yeah. Um, I guess this kind of applies because we've been talking about Cooper and Dallas and kind of what their thinking was going forward. Obviously, their cap situation and the contracts they're kind of getting stuck with. I guess their One of their offensive linemen, Lael Collins, has been given the permission as well to start seeking out trades. Um, Potential to free up a lot of cap space for them. 15 mil, I believe, is what he's going to be due. Oh no, he's scheduled to make 10, but a cap hit
10
of
would
50.
be his cap hit.
But
Lael
no,
Collins,
no,
though.
cap hit of 15.25. I guess it's a carryover from something else in his contract. So his cap is actually 15.2.
Interestingly enough, the second I looked that up on Google, the first thing I see, Bengals rumored to be interested in Lael Collins. Yeah, no shit.
Exactly. So maybe not necessarily having to go draft specific with it, and could bring in somebody. Bengals,
and if you add a Lael Collins, that's where you could draft a later round lineman, and now you have a guy who can go on the other side of the line, and now you're starting to flesh out your line a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Lael Collins is a game changer on the line. I would not be surprised at all to see the Bengals in on that, and I would not be surprised at all if Dallas sells him for cheap, because apparently that's what they're doing. They don't care about what they're getting. They just want money off their books. I would absolutely be in for Lael Collins.
So yeah, I mean, it becomes...
Amari Cooper's a fifth. I'm going he's a lineman. I'll give you a seventh.
So it starts to become actually pretty muddled here. So yeah, I mean, will the Bengals become spenders all of a sudden? Which they historically haven't been. But yeah, exactly. What time then now?
You have a elite quarterback on a rookie contract. This is the time where you go big.
And a Cowboys team that you would say would be your best in the NFC East in a, obviously a pretty crap division. But now, I mean, could you imagine? This is the scenario you potentially have right here. So Cowboys fuck up all their stuff. They have to pay all these contracts. They get rid of Amari Cooper, Collins. They don't play well their next season, right? Carson Wentz led Washington Commies winning the division. It could happen. It's no,
it can't, because that division will be too close. They'll have to play a meaningful game on the last day.
I mean, who knows who they play though? Washington could be playing the fucking Giants, on that last week. It could be golden.
Just threw a 4.4 against the Jacksonville Clowns.
Eagles any better? No, that probably wouldn't be. Eagles actually being a playoff team as well. But this is the scenario. You have Carson Wentz, and think about this. So Carson goes out. Say they win the division. He looks actually somewhat decent. Carson is now become another desired starting quarterback in the NFL.
My God,
They'll re-up the cycle, but he didn't even take any time off. He just didn't fuck up enough, and he got.
Oh my God!
They got put to the NFC East to where anybody could win. Anybody could win that fucking division. So
Carson has learned from his backup. He has become Nick Foles.
Yes.
Actually, because he goes from starter to starter, he's more likely become Ryan Fitzpatrick. But
just
you suck the whole contract. Last season of the contract, you throw up some amazing numbers. Somebody pays you the big money. You suck the whole contract. Last season of the contract. That's the Fitzmagic way, my friend.
Oh, and if it's like anything like a decent season, statistically, like you had last year.
He's a 6'4" white dude with a cannon of an arm.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's some
good old North Dakota boy
GM out there creaming his jeans to get Carson Wentz in.
It's a good old boy from North Dakota, don't you know?
Absolutely.
It has all the potential. And if he has any kind of statistical season, his agent's going to be like, this is a man that's had like 50 touchdowns and 12 picks in the last 2 seasons. Get Carson Wentz on your team.
Don't watch the video of it. Just look at the stats.
Yeah. Be sure to highlight this when I get this shit right. And Carson Wentz gets re-upped for $30 million by another fucking team that didn't land this offseason with a quarterback.
Yep. Chicago Bears, anybody?
New York Jets? Hello?
Oh, man, yeah.
Hello? Don't do it, Bob. Don't do it, Bob Saleh. Please, no. Please, no. We'll see though. I mean, and this is just a week right here. It's really starting to open up.
Yeah,
Obviously, we have more quarterbacks on the way to be moving around.
tons.
I'm really gonna be looking out for where Langy lands, where Collins lands. Some bigger names like that kind of coming available for these
Where Jimmy
guys.
G lands, because I think he's probably the next quarterback piece to fall. And
Yeah,
honestly, we talked about it before with Jimmy G. If you were to gift wrap a place to put Jimmy G in where he can be successful right away, we both said the same name the first time we talked about this. Indianapolis.
yeah,
We said the biggest issue with the Colts was that albatross of a contract that Carson Wentz has, not an albatross anymore.
yeah. Jimmy G seems like a great spot for him. Obviously, the
Garoppolo to the Colts just makes way too much sense.
and the name of Kirk Cousins all of a sudden coming out as well. I gotta have you gotta think that they're thinking that that would be a good name for him too. So there's a couple
Oh yeah,
guys out there probably
but
for the Colts.
I think the Colts too. They've always been a well-run organization for the most part. They're pretty good at scouting players. I think they probably look at their situation the same way that we do and say, we play a very similar system to those 49ers guys. This guy wins them a lot of games.
Right.
Let's bring him in. Let's win a lot of games. I think it makes too much sense. You got a running back there who you can run an almost exact same system that they run um in San Francisco. Not only that, you had a second running back kind of shine out a little bit this year in Deontay Foreman,
Oh,
right? So
sure.
now you could have that two-man system going behind him. I don't know, man. The Jimmy G to Indianapolis thing makes way too much sense to me. And they just got a bunch of picks that they can throw into that trade to get Jimmy G over.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I gotta imagine him, Kirk, Mariota, kind of in that
Yeah.
tier as well. Those are those are your likely quarterbacks to move. It seems. Um. But yeah, which one first? I think we were both surprised that Wentz moved before them.
I
But
don't get it,
yeah,
but hey, I really do. I think the commies were really in on Russell Wilson, and this was a panic buy when that didn't happen without really reading the market fully, right? Because it was a name I had heard around the commies for a while was Russell Wilson, right? And I was like, okay, I can understand why the commies would want Russell Wilson. They get Russell Wilson in there immediately, at least the second best team in the NFC East, if not the best team.
whoop, whoop. Sorry, there we go.
Got
Oh
him back.
man, yeah. Quick. There we go. All right, we're back. We're back. Sorry about that. A little misclick there while moving some windows around. We're back though.
uh, yeah, no, they're at least they get Russell Wilson and they're at least the second best team. I think they were in on that. It didn't happen. They panicked, went to Indianapolis. They had a deal in place
Yeah,
that like they were fine with paying for Carson Wentz, but they misread the market, right? Kirk Cousins is still out there. Jimmy Garoppolo is still out there. Um, the free agent class, you got guys like Mariota, and there's just too many pieces out there to make that kind of a move for Carson Wentz. So I don't know.
and
Um, couple trades I didn't love out there this week, but a couple teams I think got a lot better because of them.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it'll be interesting. The guys like your Bobby Wagner's. Some of these other guys that will get released over this time as well. It'll be interesting to see where they land. A trade like for a guy like Collins. Very much impact players that, yeah, now have the potential to be somewhere else.
I think
Seems like,
Tariq Cohen could be an interesting pickup for someone.
yeah, Cohen's kind of interesting.
A guy that I've liked in Chicago before, didn't have the greatest last couple seasons, but he wasn't playing behind the greatest offensive line. You put him in a 1-2 system, I think Tariq Cohen could maybe make something work for someone.
Yeah,
Um, Beyond that, obviously Roger Saffold getting released was a big name guard out there now. Uh, and then yeah, Bobby Wagner, right? And I guess more recently Greg Zuerlein, who has been one of the more consistent kickers in the league over the last 5 or so years, getting cut by Dallas. Um, I wonder about that one. I know he's getting paid a lot as a kicker. Like he that cleared like almost $3 million cap space for him.
Yeah.
Um, but you also pay kickers like that because they're pretty consistent, right? And for a team that had trouble closing out games, I kind of want a bit more of a consistent kicker than relying on the unknown.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing at that position. I think it's yeah, it's kind of silly to not invest something in that position, given how many games really do come down to it. So many games are going to come down to and not even just end of the game sort of scenarios. You just have to have the confidence to be able to get 3 points every now and then when you're driving the ball down the field. And drives are going to stop at the fucking 30 every now and then. And you got to have
Yeah,
a guy that's going to be able to kick you a 45, 50-yard field goal from time to time reliably because situations like that are going to come up all the time. You miss that field goal, you're pretty much putting the other team at the 50, and
yeah,
so and you can't go for it on fourth down all the time, even if you're the Los Angeles Chargers. So
yeah. And you look at both teams that made the Super Bowl this year, right? Their playoffs, they both teams had games where they started out where they moved the ball a little bit and got stopped, and Matt Gay and Evan McPherson were making field goals and keeping you close enough within reach that the
exactly,
offenses were able to get work. The Kansas City game for the Bengals is the one that particularly comes to mind, right? Where they were down 23-9 or whatever the heck it was, and the only thing that was keeping them in it was Evan McPherson was hitting field goals and keeping them within touching distance, and that's what started that comeback.
yeah.
Uh, I wonder
The
if
the
Dallas is maybe thinking this might be the year of the draft. There's
yeah.
a couple very interesting kickers in this draft
Hmm.
who well, yes, uh kicker isn't the sexiest position in the world. Um there's a couple of them that not only are coming off of great seasons. Guys like Daniel Gutierrez out of UNLV, Cameron Dicker out of Texas are the two big names. Uh, had pretty ridiculous combines. Uh, like the kickers were running like 4.6s. Like,
Yeah,
what?
athletes, man, athletes.
Um, yeah, and then obviously, and then even then, Cade York out of LSU is another one. There's a few kickers in this draft class that draftable potential for sure.
Right.
And we've seen it the last couple years with teams drafting kickers and getting some success out of it. Right? We mentioned Evan McPherson last year, Matt Hack, right, for Buffalo has been great for them as a punter. And we've seen drafting special teams positions in the last few years proving success, and we've seen how much of an issue not having good special teams can be.
Yeah,
Right?
you got it. Yeah, I think it's silly. The teams that don't invest that. We saw what happened. Green Bay literally screwed themselves out of the playoffs because their special teams were so
San
horrendous.
Francisco's offense scored 0 points against Green Bay,
Yeah,
and Green Bay lost that game.
yeah. Ugly as hell game. Obviously, we all
Yeah.
watched it. It wasn't good, but at the same time, um, something it's a uh, it's an interesting place you put yourself because it's going to be special teams is going to rely a lot on the bottom half of your roster than it is on your top half. So top heavy teams like a Green Bay Packers, like a even a potentially like a Kansas City Chiefs or that sort of thing that you're investing so much on those top guys. Yeah, you're going to have a fall off a bit on your special teams because those guys just aren't value wise. It's just not going to equal out your bottom
You
half
don't
of the
have the
roster.
gunners down there and stuff like that that can
Exactly.
really make the difference.
The
The Packers were playing a guy who was like 5'9", 190 pounds, as their long snapper.
Yeah.
And you wonder why they're getting beat off the line every time, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on how you scheme it. I think for long snapper, if your guy's reliably getting that ball to your guy, as far as your punter, your holder, then that's all you really care about. But if they're not and they're a fucking 100-0 and
yeah,
they're fucking those up, then yeah, you're on the fucking streets, dude. Like, and so yeah, and of course, it's our boy Basacha over there now for a team like the
I think
Pack.
that was a smart pickup by Green Bay. Just
Yeah,
go out and get the best guy you can to come in here and really change the shape of it. Because a lot of special teams does come down to coaching. You got to have the right guys in place, but you got to be coached well. You got to be drilled in that, and they
yeah.
clearly just weren't.
No, the I want to say it was that field goal at the end of the half. It's a
The
simple
blocked
scheme.
one,
It's
yeah.
a simple scheme. If they basically the outside guy didn't get over enough, and not even really having to get over and make a clean block, you literally just have to get your leg to the
Yeah.
inside, and you cover enough of the lane so you don't have a guy like Jimmy Ward just go pew and right
Yeah.
through and get an easy fucking block. It's as easy of a
Well,
field goal block as he could have had in that situation.
and
Uh,
there was so many things you can point out to the punt block too that led to the touchdown, right? Like
yeah,
two guys get clean through the middle, almost untouched. Punt gets blocked, and everybody just kind of stands there, right? Nobody makes it. The only people making
five
moves were the
Niners.
Niners
Where yeah,
guys.
yeah,
Yeah, and everybody just kind of stands there, like for some reason that happened, and in everybody's head they're like, okay, well the play's over now, and it's like, nah, you gotta.
yeah.
That punt gets blocked, you gotta be ready to go.
Look up.
And yeah, they just kind of all stood there and let the Niners score a touchdown off of that one. And these are things that a guy like Bisaccia is going to come in there and really help with.
Yeah. Um,
But you still need the talent, right? And for Dallas, I don't trust releasing kickers who have been consistently good. The reason I don't is because they usually end up going somewhere else and being consistently good again,
yeah.
and you end up looking for years for a kicker to replace that,
Robbie Gold
right?
has literally just taunted the Bears since they let him go.
The Bears have
And
used 7 different kickers since Robbie Gould left.
yeah,
7.
yeah.
The 49ers, since they picked up Robbie Gould, have used Robbie Gould.
And
I think they had a couple guys fill in when he got hurt this year.
Wisnowski, yeah, I think
Yeah,
had to come in at some point.
but that was only because of injury.
Yeah.
When he's been healthy, he's Robbie Gould. Listen, he missed 6 kicks this year, right? Like, I get the fact that he had a couple of rough stretches in the middle, but even in his rough stretch, he went 29 for 35.
Yeah.
That's pretty much good.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you're
pretty good.
pretty much okay with that,
Yeah.
right? This is a guy who, in his career, has been very consistent, right? Has only had 1 year where he missed 10 or more kicks in a season, right? Everything else, it's been 5, 6, 7, right? And yeah, there are other numbers you need to look at there, but I mean, that's the main one you want to look at your kicker. Does he make kicks?
Uh,
Right? I don't love cutting Greg Zuerlein to go
yeah.
cheaper at kicker. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's gonna pay off
And
for the Cowboys.
since we're talking about Greg the Leg, and so let's parlay off that into another leg, a 5-leg parlay.
Ah, parlay. Oh, you're gonna make me sad
Oh,
now.
great transition right there. That's professional. The worst 5-leg parlay in history. The worst odds you've ever seen on a bet. Calvin Ridley goes to Florida. Apparently places some bets, some NFL bets, while he is, I think he's uh, non-injury
Yeah,
week,
he was on a mental
mental
health leave. He was on non-injury
leave,
requested
basically. Yeah,
leave or something like
exactly.
that. It's some
Wasn't
long
playing
name.
that week, basically. Uh, places a couple bets. I guess one of them being a 5-leg parlay. Any of the bets actually in favor of the Falcons winning. Um,
Which I always found interesting. Like, I'd understand if he was betting against the
Yeah.
Falcons.
It's kind of like Pete Rose, right? Pete Rose never bet against the Reds, right?
The Reds, yeah.
He's always
It's
been
an
for them.
interesting thing in sports about betting, right? Where it's like, in general, you think, oh, well, if you're betting, you're clearly fixing the game. But it's like,
No.
if I'm betting for my team to win, I can't do anything more than just
I'm
play
betting
the
on
best that
myself
I
to score
play.
3 tutties, 150 yards,
Like,
10 catches.
it's
It's a
so
sick
funny because
parlay. It's a sick parlay.
in boxing in the UFC, man, that shit happens all the time.
Bet on
Dudes
yourself.
bet on themselves to win fights all the time.
Right. So this is kind of the greater point because we could pick apart Ridley or whatever for this, and yeah, it's a fucking mistake, and apparently used his own name and he did it out of state, so it dinged and
Was
it
the
was brought
big
to the
mistake is,
attention.
dude, it's 2022. If you went on there as Falcons fan 77,
Or just
this
get a homie to do the bet for you.
would have
Don't you
never
have friends,
happened.
Calvin? You have friends. You have buddies that aren't in the league that they. I mean, players bet on shit all the time. It's naive to
If
think that's not happening in other ways.
if he made this bet as Alvin Kidley, nobody would have known.
He should come back next year as an undrafted free agent, Alvin Kidley. Yes, fucking yes. Out of
Like,
out of Georgia Southern, Alvin Kidley. Um. So yeah, I mean, pick apart that all you want. The hilariousness that is the NFL and all these fucking professional leagues that are in like they're in bed now with all these sports books. Your DraftKings, your FanDuels.
watch any football game, you're gonna see 30 betting commercials.
Yeah, Super Bowl was littered with them. The very one that Calvin Ridley got busted for, or no, that I think the MGM Grand. I mean, like, I think he got the
Yeah.
Hard Rock was the one that I
Hard
think
Rock
he
was
was
one
doing.
he got, yeah.
So it's like that shit's hilarious on its own, but then it just becomes the inevitable thing of people will look at that and they'll be like, Jesus, Calvin Ridley loses an entire season for a 5-leg parlay in which he actually bet for his own team, and uh, you know, Ray Rice could beat the crap out of his girlfriend and get fucking 4 games.
And that is a very fair argument to make. I think the other fair argument I've heard is, oh, Calvin Ridley gets suspended a year for betting on his own team to win, but we don't even get an investigation into Brian Flores' accusation that his owner was going to pay him $150,000 a loss.
To tank. To actually lose fucking games.
To actively lose.
To the whole fucking integrity argument that you make all the time for players not being able to bet on shit. This is the ultimate loss integrity of your product, is when teams are specifically trying to lose games on purpose and getting paid to do so.
The reason you don't want players betting against the team that they play for is the exact thing Brian Flores said was happening.
Right.
And you didn't even think that was worth an investigation. But Calvin Ridley gets a year-long suspension for betting for his team while he is not playing.
And so it comes to this, and this is kind of the ultimate thing, because, yeah, and then you could look at the NFL and you'd be like, these fucking hypocrites.
Yes.
All that being said, nothing gets solved. This is the ultimate thing, and I think it actually relates, oddly enough, to the way that different leagues have treated things like HGH, steroids, etc. The lack of rightful kind of regulation and monitoring of these things, and instead trying to outright ban it, which isn't going to work because it's going to be done not under your supervision. People are going to do this shit. Whether it's betting on teams, that's going to happen. Athletes are going to be betting on shit. Michael Jordan, one of your favorite fucking NBA players that you knew growing up, was a fucking compulsive gambler, has known to been so. And nobody turns a fucking...
Watch The Last Dance.
Nobody, like, yeah, who gives a shit? But it's the lack of wanting to admit that this is just a thing and having the ability to have it exist within your world. It's not... You've already tried to not demonize it by... You're taking these guys' money to advertise on your platform. You know, like you have no qualms taking DraftKings money to run
Yeah.
commercials for you. So why the fuck is it such like it's you're not demonizing it obviously at that point. It's not a no bad betting. You shouldn't do that. You're obviously playing with them in that regard. So why not try to regulate this thing a little bit more?
And
Just
it'd be
like you
so
could do
easy.
exactly.
It'd be so easy. You know what the rule is? You cannot bet on the team you play on to lose.
Yeah,
There it is.
there it
Bet
is.
on whatever the hell else you want. You cannot bet on the team you play on to lose.
Dude, Matt Ryan slinging it to me today. The practice has been good. I'm thinking I'm getting 2 tutties this game. I'm betting on myself to get a couple
I'm betting on
touchdowns this game.
myself
I'd love
to get
it.
two
Why the
tutties.
fuck not? Why the fuck not? Like that. So it's just like this.
Like I said, boxing and MMA, by the way,
Yes.
happens all the time
Right.
because the rule in those are simple. You cannot bet on yourself to lose.
Mm-hmm.
That is the rule. You cannot, because you are officially fixing that fight at that point. However, there's been numerous circumstances of UFC guys going, "Yo, I just doubled my payday because I bet my entire purse on myself to win. What up?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
everybody's like, "Oh my God, what a gangster move, man! You walk into a cage and you're so confident, you bet on yourself to win. You bet your entire purse on yourself to win.
double or
That's a
nothing,
gangster
baby.
move right there.
Nothing better
That's
than
a
double or
gangster
nothing.
move,
Yeah. So
right?" NFL, you're betting on your team to win. Nah, fuck you. That's a year-long suspension, bud.
yeah. So
Um, I'm with you. I think it's such an easy regulation to make. Where, like I said, you just go, okay, here's the rule. It's in the rule book for sports betting. You cannot bet on yourself to lose or a prop bet that you can actively throw, right? So, for example, if Calvin Ridley's over under on yards, or you have to bet the over on a prop bet that involves you,
yeah.
right? So if your over under
Or
yards is like 50, you can't bet on the under yards and then be at 49 yards and just swat down a ball so that you win your bet, right?
yeah.
You have to bet on the over on a prop bet that involves you, and you cannot bet on your team to lose.
I mean, and I don't even know if you necessarily even have to make it hard fucking rules. You just have it regulated. You have people that monitor the bets that are put in by your players, literally look through, and you would track everything
Yeah.
because you do your due diligence in that regard. And if anything is suspicious that even comes up, as far as what yeah, if it's a game that player is going to be involved in and they have the ability to, yeah, then you send an alert, whatever, that sort of thing. You conference with the player potentially. You actually have a dialogue, maybe
Yeah.
that would be fucking amazing. You actually have a conversation to actually find out
Oh,
where somebody is and something. That would be fucking amazing. So all those things, it's hilarious. As far as it's not hilarious that Ridley lose out a fucking season.
a whole season.
That's not funny.
Now,
It's hilarious, the hypocrisy and
yeah.
the lack of just stuck in your old ways, NFL. Like, get with the fucking times, basically.
Here's the other thing about that, because I love your monitoring idea, and here's why. Leagues always like to preach about how, oh, we're doing what's best for the players. We got steroids out of the game of baseball because they're unhealthy for players,
Beat
which
him.
is true, but it is not why they got rid of steroids.
No, but I mean, you find out something else. The HGH became the new steroids, basically.
Yeah,
So,
so
anyways.
their idea was like, we're doing this for the betterment of players.
Right.
If Here's the thing, if you do that monitoring system, you actually do get to do something for the betterment of players. You're monitoring their bets. You notice guys are betting too much. You go up to them, hey, listen, buddy,
Yes.
we think you might have a bit of an issue with gambling here. We want to get you some help. We want to we want to get you somebody you can talk to who can maybe help you, kind of curb this down, because we're noticing you're spending like hundreds of thousands of dollars on gambling here. You don't have a long career in the NFL. We're going to get you the help you need, buddy. And then the NFL looks like the good guys.
Yeah.
You look like the good guys. It's not hard, right? Like, we've talked about this before with steroids and HGH in baseball. I think we brought this up before, where we both kind of agree that banning steroids outright, though we understand why, there was a better way to probably go about doing it, right? Where you could have kept the integrity of the game and also A, done more to help the players,
Yeah.
and B, kept some of the fun, right?
Yes.
Because let's face it, ordinary person like you or me goes in for surgery on a torn ACL. You know what the first thing they're giving us is? HGH.
Yeah.
We're getting that shit pumped into our blood. It's going to help you recover faster. It's going to help the muscle rebuild. It's going to do all that. We're going to do it in a monitored amount. We're not going to give you too much. It's not going to do anything crazy to you, but it's going to help that knee rebuild itself. First thing doctor's doing. It's like the first thing in your blood. You don't even know it. Because they're doing it right away because it's just the way you recover. Right? It's just the way that they can help the human body recover. There's ways to do things like that to make it good for the players, to help players who have an issue abusing these drugs to stop abusing them and get the help they need, and to keep some of the fun around of the steroid era, because let's face it, that was fun.
Yeah.
Dudes smashing home runs was fun. I don't think anybody here's advocating for steroid abuse. It's obviously awful for your body. But there are circumstances where human growth hormone, where steroids, for common everyday people like you and me, are going to be used, right? To help us with everyday problems we have that players have tenfold, right? It's the whole thing with the leagues in weed too, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh man, we have an issue with prescription pain medication we don't want to do. Let players smoke, man.
Yeah.
Weed is so good for brain health and joint and muscle pain. Like, fuck.
Yeah.
Stop standing in your own way. This is
No.
the same thing. Don't stand in your own way. Let players join the rest of the world as we enjoy sportsbook gambling responsibly.
Yeah.
Monitor them. Make sure that they're doing the right things. Make sure that they're not actively throwing games for their bets.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
And just kind of one last thing I'll bring up for it. It's kind of interesting too because, like, with the people that are the owners of a lot of these teams, obviously this is the old boys club, right? This is these are folks that are well into their years. They've been billionaires for a while, right? And this probably isn't the only thing that they're invested in as far as their teams are concerned, but the usual thing would be, and the hesitancy toward weed, right? Because it was,
Yeah.
as far as in the U.S., criminalized, federally. Still is soon as far as the federal, but now you have individual states, and so that opens it up a lot more. Obviously, the overall feeling, kind of across the nation, even though plenty of states still have it as an offense, is that it's becoming, eased up on, at least a bit. But it's not like fully, obviously. And on a federal level, it's still not. But at least the sports leagues, they're starting to come around, and NBA and NFL have kind of come around, or NFL's eventually coming around. I think they're still researching it basically, but
Yeah.
the idea that in states that it is legal, that players have access to be able to utilize marijuana.
Yeah.
What's interesting is gambling's always been kind of an old boys thing that they're
That's
interested
the
in getting
shocking part
in.
of this to me, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like every single fucking NFL owner in the league is going down to Kentucky in a few months' time and going to bet on the horses, right? Like every
Yeah.
single one of them.
I mean, at this point, like, they have, there are owners with stakes in sports books
Yep.
that have basically their players or other players of other teams as their customers at this point. Whether it's well known, like now we have fucking Ridley, but you're naive to think that a whole shit ton of players across the league aren't betting some way, shape, or form. Whether
of course.
it's a friend or whatever that they go through, and that's not even as bad as the illegal bookies, and that's worse.
Or they're Alvin Kidley on freaking DraftKings.
Perhaps. But you eliminate that. Why would you go through an illegal bookie if the league allowed you to do so under, certain regulations that don't go
Yeah.
against the integrity of the game. But that's the only thing you really have to argue against at this point.
Oh man, if
The
only we were
integrity of the game.
partnered with the world's largest sportsbook betting website where we could find a way to work with them to set up something where we could be able to see the bets the players are placing and monitor what's going on. I
I
wonder if they were linked with a certain sportsbook who could maybe help them set that up.
I thought at first you were gonna say that this show should get a sportsbook sponsorship. I'm like, I'm fucking down, dude. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Come on,
DraftKings, hit us
DraftKings,
up.
FanDuel. We hear you. No.
Nah, McAfee's got FanDuel on
Yeah,
lock.
we'll go DraftKings. That's fine. Or we get. I do like the Caesars commercials. Those are hilarious with the Manning Bros and shit. So we
Yeah,
can work
they are
on
pretty
that
good.
too. All right. But yeah. So I don't know. That was just kind of the. It really sucks for Ridley, but it'll be funny when I would say give it because they can't do it right away. Maybe they could. I mean, but owners rules changes, and obviously that will have to be incorporated into like a CBA of some sort. That's not going to happen anytime soon. But I would say give it like 3 years, something like that. Yeah, as we start to approach perhaps another bargaining agreement. I don't know how long their current one is that they just signed goes for, but maybe a willingness to have this available for players. I could see this down the line potential for them.
For
It'd
sure.
be smart for them. It'd be there in their best interest. And like you said, there's situations in which they could look like the good guy while still making a shit ton of money on this stuff, which they have been. So, um, let's keep it going here. As far as I think we hit on a lot of NFL stuff. I'm trying to think right now. You already hit on a lot of draft stuff. Anything else you're looking at? I mean, obviously we've talked about the ridiculous O lineman speeds. We talked about some kickers and that sort of thing. Some quarterback potential draft picks here. Anything else you're looking at in this 2022 draft? I know Craig has a little bit more of an eye on the college game. Those guys who compete in the combine. Maybe some guys that didn't go to the combine that still are a little bit interesting as we go to some pro days and stuff down the line here.
So there are a few stories I was going to bring up. The number one pick story right now is very fascinating because this is the first year where it's not a real lock.
Right.
I think most people think they're going to take Evan Neal. I would take Evan Neal if I had the chance to get a 6'7", 350-pound left tackle who is an absolute monster who ran like a 4.7 40 and had the highest vert jump out of any player in the league at the draft. I think I would take that guy. It doesn't sound like Jacksonville is looking that way. At the moment, it sounds like Jacksonville, after tagging Campbell, are looking maybe to Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson is very good. I love Aiden Hutchinson. That would be a huge mistake.
Damn.
You have just franchise tagged the left tackle. That gives you a year. You franchise tagged him last year, which means that next year's franchise tag is going to be almost double the cost of the one that you paid him this year. As I mentioned, 6'7", 350 freak athletes don't come every day. And like, I don't know if you saw the picture of Evan Neal with his shirt off. That dude is jacked to the gills. That is not like 350. I'm not going to be able to put a jersey over my gut. That dude is stacked. Evan Neal is going to be a beast of an outside tackle. And I think it'd be a huge mistake if they don't go to him. But it doesn't sound like they're going to. It sounds like Aiden Hutchinson might be their guy. If not, could be Ekemekwankwu. But I don't know how. I still can't bring myself to believe they're going to pass on Evan Neal. You mentioned it earlier. The offensive line class in this draft is particularly ridiculous. I believe at the moment there's projected to be 8 offensive linemen go in the first round. Studs all over the offensive line across the board. Uh, Ekem Kwanu, who I mentioned earlier, whose name I'm going to butcher every time I pronounce it. But that's another guy to look out for. He is very good in this draft. Kayvon Thibodeau is apparently falling like a rock in people's rankings. The rumor is um he doesn't give her on every play. Right? The rumor coming out is people have started watching tape and talk to his coaches, and apparently he's got a tendency to take some plays off. You can get that out of a guy.
Right.
I think if you go goes to the right team, gets the right coach behind him, you
Yeah.
can get that out of a guy.
Yeah.
What you can't get into a guy is 6'5", 260, unbelievable strength, unbelievable speed.
Right.
Right? That's something you can't teach. I'm not buying the hype of Kayvon Thibodeau's fall. I think he's
Oh, okay.
well in the
You flipped that on me. I was like, you're not buying the hype? Oh, the fall. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I think he's still well within the top 5. Uh honestly, I'd be shocked if he gets past the Jets at 4. If he falls at all, right? Like he could very well go at 3, but he's not getting past the Jets at 4. Um so that's another thing to look out for. If he does fall, somebody's getting a hell of a steal. Um I mentioned it. I think the Seahawks are going to be the first team to take a quarterback on the board. I think when they made that trade it was obvious. I I like them to take Malik Willis
Okay.
at the moment because he reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson. A little bit on the shorter side. He's only 6 feet tall. Uh, they said at the combine he was 6'2", but I also saw the shoes he was wearing. He is only 6 feet tall. Um, he's got a live arm. It's a pretty decent arm, but a little bit of an accuracy issue. He's going to take a little bit of time to develop, I think, but he's got great legs, great arm. He's a lot like Russell Wilson in that sense. I think he's the first quarterback to go, and I think he goes to the Seahawks. I will say one more thing about quarterbacks before I move on to a couple other names to look out for who might be doing some moving on the draft board. Um, Anybody who's buying into the Kenny Pickett small hand hype needs to go find a hole and just stay in it. Listen, the thing I've heard about his hand size is like, oh man, because of his small hands, man, I don't know if he can play in bad weather. Excuse me, the dude played for Pittsburgh
Yeah.
in Heinz Field. You know that place that's known for having no wind issues. It never snows. It's always beautiful in Pittsburgh, right? The guy threw for 5,000 yards in Pittsburgh last year. I think he can play in bad weather. Okay? I don't care about the size of his hands. This guy.
Sorry, this
But,
Dover McKinney fight's going off right now.
oh, shit.
Jesus, he's looking for another quick knockout.
McKinney
He just fought.
Dude,
He fought
McKinney's
14 days ago, and he knocked. He had a
knocked the
5-second
dude
fight.
out in like 2 minutes, right? And that was his second fight in the UFC after knocking a dude out in 7 seconds. Dober's a tough son of a bitch, though. I would be surprised if he goes away that easily.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, he's there. He's fighting still. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I did not mean to take off.
Yeah,
yours.
no,
I just couldn't help.
by all means, I looked away. Kenny Pickett's by far the most ready quarterback in this draft,
Yeah.
and I've seen a lot of drafts that have him going out of the first round. I'll say right now, there's no way if he hasn't been picked yet, Detroit leaves him at 32. There's no way if he hasn't been picked yet, Detroit doesn't look at that and go, we can just bring this guy in and he's our starter.
Right.
Right? We have nothing with Jared Goff.
That'd be insane if he fell that far, right? Though, because I think everybody was thinking first round, no doubt for Kenny.
Coming into the combine,
right?
I had seen him mocked as high as 7.
Okay.
I had seen him mocked as high as 7 to the Giants, and the lowest I had seen him mocked was 18 going to the Saints.
Right.
Now, there are mocks that don't even have him in the first round, having guys like Carson Strong going off the board above him. Who Carson Strong, by the way, his prospect ranking, according to NFL.com, is 98th. I cannot see that many teams letting him fall. And like I said, This dude is the most polished guy in the NFL. You're worried about his ability to play in cold weather? Detroit don't care about that. They play in a dome, baby. Let they're not letting Kenny Pickett slip past him. So Kenny Pickett will be a first round guy. I'll say that right now. But anybody who's giving me the small hands crap, I honestly thought we got rid of this with Kyler Murray, where he's too short to be a good quarterback in the NFL. Like I thought we got rid of this stupid old boy bullshit about measurements meaning more than the game film. Watch Kenny Pickett throw a football. Go ahead and watch any of the, I'm sure, dozens of snow games he played in Pittsburgh and watch Kenny Pickett's ability to throw the ball
Yeah.
and tell me he can't play in cold weather. Tell me he can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's always something. It's always something.
Yeah.
There's going to be it's at least one story every draft class coming up. I think last season it was Jamar Chase and having to deal with the NFL football and catching it, right?
Yep.
And everybody was shitting on Jamar Chase, thinking he can't catch anymore. And this was not going to be a guy. And then he goes to the Bengals. He goes back with Joey B. Here's Dober. Oh, Dober's laying the wood. Wow, he cut him off.
Oh my god!
Oh my god.
For those of you who are watching this and listening to it and not actually seeing, Drew Dober just came back from getting absolutely pummeled for the first minute to TKO Terrence McKinney.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. I mean, yeah, you got to go on the defense. It's not like McKinney was doing much to
No,
get out
that's
of
a
the
good stop.
situation.
You can't just lay there and get punched in the face a bunch and expect the referee to come in and bail you out or let you.
You got to be active quick. I think that's the thing. That's it. That's You might not even be like fully out and hurt, but you just strategy wise, that knee, glanced.
You can't just shell up, right? You can't just do what he was doing there and just shell up and let a guy punch you in the face a bunch of times. They're gonna stop that.
You got to be verbalizing it or something like that. You can be like, you got to really just keep convincing the ref that you're good. If you are gonna take shots for a period of time, trying to wear him out.
Even so, I've seen that happen a lot where guys are like, I'm good, and the referee tells him, yeah, but you got to start defending yourself or I'm still stepping in. I don't care.
I mean,
and watching that replay, by the way, he wasn't blocking any of those shots.
He catches a couple. The last shot that lands is completely armed, though. Like, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, well, fucking huge.
What a comeback by Drew Dober.
That was great. Anyways.
Yes. Moving forward. So yeah, that's my Kenny Pickett rant. The small hands thing, it just bugged me when I heard that. I was like, really? We're doing the Kyler Murray thing all over again. Oh, I can't take Kyler Murray first overall. He's too short. Now it's small hands. The dude can play. Watch his film.
Yeah.
Dude can ball.
But yeah, and I guess that was the point I was just last on was, like, there's some that they like to just get hung up on to move the board. I mean, who knows? Like, the way that the stories come out, and who's I'd be interested to see like who first made note of that. Like, what camp did that come out as far as like the concern about the hand size? Like, there's always like
It was at the combine.
But like it's always like upper official for this team stated that it's a concern. Like, there's always some kind of, it's rooted into some kind of upper management or something like that having a concern over it, and then it becomes a bigger story than it really fucking is. And granted, maybe a team or two looks at that and they don't have interest in Kenny Pickett, but it starts to become a thing to where it's like all the teams are worried about that because one fucking guy says something and it's like, this is a real concern across the NFL. It's like not really the case. And I hope he's, just for the sake of not having that crazy money fall off, he doesn't fall as far as something like a 32. I think that would be pretty astounding to see that. But I agree with you. I couldn't see him ever falling out of the first. So
No, there's no chance he gets past Detroit because Detroit's going to look at him and go, he's at least as good as Jared Goff right now,
Right.
right? So there's no way.
Ouch.
Um,
Fuck it.
couple couple
Poor
guys who I
Goff.
think really improve their draft stock at the combine, Jermaine Johnson, Florida State edge rusher, looked like an absolute monster during the drills. Ran a pretty good 40. Is 6'5", is an absolute beast. He's gonna be a guy to look out for. Sauce Gardner, I think, might be the first cornerback off the board now. For a while there, it looked like it was going to be Derek Stingley, but Sauce Gardner, coming off of a phenomenal year with Cincinnati, after having a couple phenomenal years with Cincinnati, and then goes to the combine, looks like the best cornerback there. He's going to be the first one off the board. And then obviously my favorite guy in this draft, I've mentioned his name before. 6'6", 341 pounds, runs a 4.640. Jordan Davis. I know it's not sexy to draft run stoppers in the first round, but if you're 6'6", 340 pounds and run a 4.640, you're going to get your fair share of sacks. Just simply because of the fact that you outran three of the top starting quarterbacks in the NFL at the combine.
Right.
There was an awesome side by side that they showed Jordan Davis's 40 compared to Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, uh, Lamar Jackson, and Kyler Murray. The only person he didn't outrun on that was Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. Crazy. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Few names to
It's
look out for there. I'll have a complete mock draft done, by the way, and
yes.
I'll either with Jay or maybe do just a separate video where I go through my mock draft, kind of explain who I got. But I think it's kind of foolish to do a complete mock draft until free agency's done because
Yeah.
you never know what team needs are going to change at that point.
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely down to do a draft look to of some sort. I've been starting to take a look a little bit more. Obviously, you know, yeah, combine tape's all right, but you only get so much of that. Starting to really take a look at some of these early mocks though. Kind of see some tape on some of these guys because yeah,
Yeah.
I don't uh, follow the college game as much, and you only get so much of a sense just looking at like straight up highlights. So it'll be kind of interesting going forward as I take a look at some of these guys, like how many real meaningful games how they play in
Yeah.
those, and yeah, the whole idea of this not being a quarterback heavy one, and the how ambiguous the I who is actually going to go first, not really having that outright pick there, and how that's going to affect it's like just the way that those first five, those first 10 picks can really shake up depending on who does take one, as far as maybe a position class that some of these teams are looking, especially when you're talking about those offensive linemen, um, the pass rushers that you have in there, and then of course you brought up the tight ends as well earlier. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's going to be some teams that are going to have to maybe go with like a kind of plan B just because of there's not a great certainty as far as what's going to even be available when their picks come up and who's going
This
to get
is
picked before them.
this is the first time I can remember in a while where there's not a ton of offense to be had in the first round of this draft, right? There's not many great wide receivers. There's not that great quarterback out there. I think there's some sleeper tight ends, but they're a bit later in the class. So you really look at it, and this is the kind of draft class where somebody's gonna make a really bad mistake, right? Somebody's gonna go out of their way to draft Carson Strong or something like that in the first round, or maybe one of the later round wide receivers. They try to bring him up to the first round, or maybe a tight end that they like. They get him in the first round out of fear of missing out, right? Complete FOMO. Um, this is the kind of draft where that happens.
Yeah.
right. Which is, I think, what makes it even more interesting, right? It's like, who's gonna be the team who makes that mistake, right? Who's gonna be the team who? It's probably the Raiders. I'm just gonna throw it out there right now. It's almost always the
They
Raiders.
historically really make some odd picks
Uh,
in their drafts.
I
Yes.
can't remember who was there was a receiver who ran like a 4.240. The Raiders are gonna draft him.
Yeah. Speed. Draft speed.
Although
Absolutely.
I do love the idea of Jordan Davis falling to the Raiders pick and the Raiders being like, wait,
Yes.
he's 6'6", 340 and runs fast?
Yes.
Woo!
Put him on there. We're gonna have him running routes soon enough. We'll have some packages for him.
Get him playing tight end,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. Oof. Opposite of
He can work on his hands.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Work on the hands a little bit. You can probably catch all right. It's probably
Yeah.
um yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean
very, very early, I think, to be doing full on draft predictions of where guys are gonna go. Um, because again, free agency is gonna change everything,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
The Patriots, for example, right now, I think they're gonna look to take a linebacker, uh, to maybe be an incumbent replacement, as their linebacking core in general is just kind of old. But they go out and they make a move at linebacker, get a young guy, get a younger guy who's in free agency. That changes, right? That's the thing. That's why it's foolish to try to mock draft before free agency. I don't think it's worth it outside of like if things stay as they are, here's where everybody will go, but they won't. So yeah, I did the Kenny Pickett thing bothered me more than anything else. So
um
fucking small hands can't
yeah,
play in
yeah.
cold weather. He played in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. We'll see how wrong that ends up being down the line here. But might as well let's keep it with a little bit of the college stuff here. And an interesting story. This popped up yesterday.
Yes.
Actually, amongst my Madden career, someone brought this up, and this is kind of an interesting thing because I've been interested in this whole idea of NILs and collegiate athletics um, having to intertwine, and now you have players even prior to collegiate athletics, but mainly going to be affecting that. And kind of this is what this story is about is um, the how much value players are going to be putting into it, and the money to be made there obviously is going to be there. But the interesting story for this one, so Florida State defensive back
It is Jarvis
Jarvis
Brownlee.
Brownlee. Um, he is but apparently currently not working out, not attending and working in practices because not necessarily that he doesn't have an NIL deal in place. It's that his NIL deal can't go through due to some like technicalities or something while he's on the team in his current capacity. So basically, he's holding out
Yeah.
effectively from playing. It's the first kind of occurrence of this happening um, in college sports. If you've heard me talk about it before, I am, uh, while I like it as far as, it's enjoyable to watch and, the bowl season's always exciting and that sort of thing. And collegiate football in general is, enjoyable for sure. Maybe I haven't kept up with it as much recently, but it's still an enjoyable thing. The whole facade behind this amateurism
Yes.
and essentially just making shit tons of money off these kids without the argument being that they get scholarship rights through their college, but their ability to make money off their likeness has not been there until this past year or so with NILs, name and image likeness. Um, I've been all for NILs. I think it's
100%.
awesome that they have the ability to make money off themselves as
And we get
adults.
college football games again.
Yeah,
Oh, That's the best.
These are, the argument with this scholarship stuff is something uh, at a very simple, I guess. If players don't have NIL deals in place, but the idea that as adults that these guys aren't able to make money doing
Yeah,
what they do is absurd. I think to myself, simply for me, in my career as doing web and graphic design, if I wasn't able to pursue that professionally when I was in college, just getting out of high school and that sort of thing, I wouldn't have the career that I have today.
yeah,
Simple as that. And these guys simply can't make money at all off of what they're doing. They're sacrificing themselves, their body, and this whole facade of collegiate athletics and this thing has hindered it. And so I've been a big fan of NIL. To see it affected like this is disappointing because it will kind of like villainize it for some people. Um, and it's a greed play. But uh, given that the collegiate athletics, like, yeah, trying to keep this amateurism in place is bullshit, anyways.
yeah.
I'm kind of all for it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Especially I'd say in college basketball, where the scholarship argument's like they're only in college because the NBA doesn't allow them to draft out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Right? At least in football, the NFL has the 4 year requirement, or the 3 year requirement rather. So most guys will get a degree anyways. So there's at least that part of it. But you're right. You're right. It's 100% ridiculous. The NCAA makes so much money off of college football, and the fact that the players see none of it is kind of bullshit. Name, image, likeness deals are a very easy way for the NCAA to have its cake and eat it too. They get to make all the money they want off their sponsorships and stuff like that, and they allow the players to have their own deals, right? To be their own people. It allows them to publish video games that they will make a lot of money off of because the players will get a small piece of that pie. It's not going to be a large piece, but it's going to be a piece, and that's important,
Yeah.
right? It'll allow the NCAA to have commercials where the players are the face of the commercials, and they will make more money off of those commercials, right? This is a way that the NCAA wins in this as well as the players, so I don't get why this took so long. But
Yeah.
I understand where Jarvis Brownlee's coming from in a sense, right? I understand the idea of like, hey, we had this deal in place. I feel like I'm getting screwed on it. And so until we can work to something, I just don't feel like it's right for me to be here being pissed off, taken away from the team, right? If that's what's happening here, I completely get that, right? Um, People are gonna bitch about it, but people are gonna bitch about anything. Welcome to the world of the internet.
Right.
Everybody's got something to complain about. Um, I don't think for me this changes my viewpoint of NIL deals in any way, shape, or form. Right? I still think this was the bare minimum the NCAA could do for his players. Should they be paying them? 100%. But bare minimum, you can do this.
It's yeah. I mean, it's just this thing. And the NFL having this 3 year thing, and yeah, I guess it keeps guys around for a couple more years. And I guess some people have made the argument that they need these years to kind of develop for the NFL to have a proper D League. The ability for these guys to have to go through college amateurism athletics after they get out of high school for reasons because that's how it's always been done, I guess.
Yeah,
The avenue for players not to have to go through, because it's a facade.
yeah,
I've been in classrooms with players, football players before. I've seen how seriously they take this shit. Some of them don't take it seriously at all. We're not surprised by that. That's the least secret thing
yeah.
in history. Fucking athletic, people in athletics don't. And who's to blame them? They're not there to get your fucking communications degree. They're there to play football or baseball or whatever. So it's the idea that they don't have a real professional avenue as far as football is concerned to uh, to do that, yeah, you're gonna have situations to where like guys aren't in on these college teams because they're getting anything out of their education. I will say some figure that they do, and they might realize it a
Yes.
year or two into their collegiate career that maybe, hey, I could get a degree in communications. Maybe they become, a fucking announcer after they retire from football because they're actually good at speaking because they went
Yeah.
that path. But I think the other avenue to actually going right into professional as adults should be there.
I have had this idea before. I've talked to other people about this idea.
Yeah.
And it's something I came up with a while ago when we were talking about this as like a potential, like, okay, you want players to have these scholarships and yada yada yada. What if at the collegiate level you had a sporting degree specifically based around the sport that you are in,
Right.
right? So when you go to say USC on a scholarship, you're going there on a football scholarship. The classes you take involve studying film, how to study film properly, maybe some coaching classes, right, to give you an avenue out after your career is done.
Yeah.
Your football practices are in a way classes, right? And in that sense, what you're paying for then is you are paying for these classes to help further your own career, similarly to what you do in regular university.
Yeah. Or like a
That
vocational school, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Where like you get your scholarship to USC and your scholarship is for football. So what you do is like your 9 a.m. class, instead of going to home ec, you go to film studies, right? And you take a film study class that teaches you how to break down film better, how to what you should look for in film in order to improve what you're playing for, right? The little things you can look for in film. Because I've actually heard NFL players talk before about learning how to study film should be a thing, right? Like it's
Yeah.
learning what you should look for is very much a thing that players need to do,
Sure.
right? You take a course you take a coaching course, right? Yeah, maybe most guys don't want to look into coaching, but you know what? A, it'll help you be a better player, right? Seeing what your coaches want out of you will help you be a better player.
Yeah.
And B, maybe it turns into something you think about doing after you're done, right? Maybe you got your coaching degree now. You've got your coaching licenses from taking your courses in university, and you go, you know what? I don't want to leave the sport of football yet. I'd love to be a linebackers coach. I took courses, so I know exactly how to jump into this job right away. I'm gonna be the kind of guy who can jump in here, and I'm not gonna need to be an assistant who learns. I'm ready for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a way you can do it,
Um,
right?
you'll want to check out this replay real quick. Roundtree just
Oh, I
Jesus.
love Khalil Roundtree. That's
Holy
my dude.
shit, he just whooped the crap out of that guy. Oh, that was a rough open.
Oh, sweet cross, man. Oh, that body kick was disgusting as he was trying to get up. Yeah, that's done. Oh man, Khalil, my man. I still miss your mustache.
Yeah, he did have some pretty awesome facial hair.
He did have a legendary mustache.
Um, but yeah, so I with NIL, like I think this might publicly make some people kind of be like, the greed and that sort of thing. Look at what they're doing. They're not even
Yeah.
willing to play college anymore. But it's like, no, you're like,
No, you're
this is
misreading the
interesting. I
yeah.
think this is an interesting scenario. I don't know how much um like the specifics of it. The specifics aren't really
Yeah.
out yet as far as like what the hell is Florida State doing that's preventing him from getting money through an NIL deal? Is it like snaps? Is it, guarantee of playing time? What exactly?
And that could be the interesting thing about this, right? Like if you have a snap target for some kind of a deal that you have,
Yeah.
and we're at the end of a season and you get sat out for a game, and coach says, oh, it's all about the development, right? these are colleges we're talking about. They're the greediest sons of bitches out there. Of course, if Florida State's freaking 4-7 going into their last game, they stand to have a guy make $500,000 if he plays 20 snaps.
No.
Set him out.
Crazy that it could come to that. If it's not directly getting out of anybody's pocketbooks
Yeah.
as far as the college is concerned, it'd be insane to think that they have any feel one way or another. But it's something they're gonna have to take into account for these kids potentially.
It is pretty crazy.
This won't be the first one we'll hear of this.
Nope.
Or this is the first one we've heard of this. Won't be the last we hear.
Won't
of
be
this.
the last. Yeah.
And so but that's a dealing between NCAA that has had a kind of stranglehold over a lot of their players for a while now, and kind of this new realization that they want to play ball with them a little bit more, so to speak.
Yeah, they're gonna have to treat them like actual athletes and not. I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen the South Park episode where Cartman goes to the University of Colorado.
Collegiate.
Student athletes.
Yeah. Fucking great episode.
Our nation was built on the ability that one person could not hoard all the slaves from another. Screw you. I'm going home.
But let's kind of keep it in the realm of trying to play ball and kind of two sides having to come together on things. Another exciting news this week. Baseball's back, y'all. Baseball is back. MLB, anyways, is back. I guess baseball has always existed in other ways, obviously. But the MLB has finally figured their shit out, kind of, I guess. The MLB Players Association and the owners have come together. And I guess they have signed a new collective bargaining agreement between the two sides. I think having to deal with all sorts of things, including like international draft and all sorts of little deals like
that. Which
they
still have not come to an agreement on, actually. That's one of the interesting things.
Oh, so it's still up in the air, but I guess they want to continue.
They have ratified the CBA with a July deadline set on whether or not an international draft is going to happen.
Right.
And the way it works in the CBA, like, I know there's a lot of people who panicked when they heard that. The way it works in the CBA is if they don't come up with an agreement, international free agency is going to work the same way it always has. Right? Instead of being in the draft, they'll just still be free agents, and they'll come back to it at a later date.
Yeah.
So it's not going to ruin the CBA or anything like that. Yeah, owners won. The owners got a lot of what they wanted.
It was interesting to see. I mean, because I think in a lot of these negotiations, because we've kind of seen the same thing happen with the NFL to an extent. Owners usually do win these damn things, right? At least to an extent. There's maybe some things that are given on the other side, but in general, it feels like it more leans toward what they're looking at. What was interesting, kind of seeing this from the outside and looking at Twitter and that sort of thing in regards to this, was that in the public eye, typically the players will get a decent amount of support because you're talking about millionaires versus billionaires, basically. The player and the realization that the owners are making shit tons of money off this, and players looking for certain pieces of the pie or just certain protections, what have you. And so they usually get a pretty good support. I was very interested to see in this one, as it was especially in the last couple weeks. People were not so behind the players in this one.
Which was fascinating to me.
Yeah, they were very much like, this is the players' fault that we're not getting baseball, basically. This was their feeling.
I think the problem with baseball is the top few guys make such large amounts of money.
Yes.
Right? Like, what's Mike Trout's contract? $230 million?
Yeah. There's 250s dropped.
So
7-8 year fucking deals, right?
So I think a lot of people looked at what the players bargaining for a larger allegation of money, and they're going, "Oh, hold on, Mister $230 million contract over there, right?" But I think they were missing the point. That larger allocation of money wasn't meant for the $230 million players. League minimum last year was 500,000.
Right.
Right, that was the league minimum. The rookie minimum in the minor leagues last year was $25,000.
Right.
That was a lot of where the players' issue was. They wanted those two numbers raised. They wanted that $500,000 number raised, which they got. They wanted the minor league salaries raised, which they did not get, which is a particular shame to me.
Yeah.
Because I like 20,000 a season, really. It's what we're doing for these young guys playing in the minors trying to make their way up. We can't make it so that, they don't need to get a job at Whataburger while they're trying to make the majors.
Yeah.
Like, but I
Brutal.
understand some people who looked at this from the outside and went, "Oh, $240 million players over here wanting more money." Not quite what was happening here. There was a little bit more underneath that side of the money argument. Because honestly, the way that the new CBA works, the upper end players are gonna make any more money, right? As a matter of fact, the way the new CBA works, because luxury tax didn't change at all, really. I think there was an extra like 5 million added to it. Uh, the upper end guys might honestly end up making less out of this. So, so before everybody gets on the $200 million guys about this, they ended up taking a bit of a hit on this CBA for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea that um the greed was coming more from the player's side than the owner's side in this is fucking astounding. Given that this league right now somehow still operates without a cap, and you have teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates that do not give a shit. They literally ship all their good players out of there. They make money before the first pitch is even thrown
Yep.
to begin their season off of their fucking TV deals, local TV deals, all this shit, and
Yep.
their collective bargaining agreement in which their like money is also pooled as far as their national contract, and everybody gets a little piece of the pie off that as well.
Yep.
Pittsburgh Pirates they have no
Oakland
incentive right
Athletics,
now.
same thing.
Yeah, Oakland at least decently puts out a team somehow without spending
But
as much.
they do it without spending money,
Exactly.
right? Like that's my point as
Pittsburgh
far as
puts out a
that's concerned.
crap product and they
Pittsburgh
don't
puts out a
spend
shit
money.
team and they don't spend money. Oakland doesn't spend money, but they moneyball their way to good teams,
Yeah, somehow. Which
and
is
we glorify it by making movies about it.
yeah, but I mean, as long as you're winning, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah, that's just it.
I guess that's it.
Um,
Not every
yeah,
not everybody can be, in that ridiculous world, you then have your Yankees and your Dodgers that are spending incredible amounts of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars on their
the
teams in a given year.
the who was the big free agent signing the Dodgers made last year? Um, Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer
Oh
contract.
wow, yeah, I guess.
Uh, his contract. He was making more money than four MLB teams.
Yeah,
One
one guy in a team
dude.
game. Um, so it's just kind of in the way that it operates like that. It's pretty astounding that there was any uh, the negativity I was seeing toward the players in this battle.
Thing
Um,
that stood out to me is since the last CBA agreement was made in 2010, something like that. The MLB has made a net gain of uh $370 billion, and the average contract length and pay has actually decreased in the MLB in that time.
Wow.
Uh, People get caught in the exorbitant numbers and don't
Exactly.
look at the median, which is where the issue came here, right? Players are looking at this going, hey, league's made like $300 billion since the last time we did this. Our contracts as a whole have gone down. Where can we meet in the middle for this one? Where, you take some of that $300 billion and give it back to the people who made you guys $300 billion. And that didn't really happen out of this. And I think that's very interesting. Like, yeah, the league minimum's up 100,000, and they have the pre-arbitration bonus pool of 50 million, right, which gets spread amongst the top 30 players, I believe it is, by WAR. Um that's a drop in the bucket
Yeah.
compared to the numbers that they're making. Like, a lot of people look at baseball and see that the TV numbers are down and think that it's all doom and gloom. Attendance numbers are through the roof up because, fun fact, as people maybe not watch it on TV as much, baseball games are really fun to go to. If you've never been
Yeah.
to a MLB baseball game before, it's a lot of fun. It's a good time. Go to the ballpark, watch the game, drink some brews, have a hot dog, sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Uh, you sit down on the foul line, and every time a ball's hit, you got the glove up ready to go, man. You're waiting for that ball to come to you. It's fun. It's an experience. Um, MLB's making money hand over fist. And the players were looking at that going, I want some of that money. And they
Yeah.
didn't get it. They
Yeah.
didn't really get it. Uh the one thing that bothered me more than anything is postseason being expanded. Hate that. I love the fact that the NFL and MLB, it's hard to make the playoffs. You've got to be a really good team to make the playoffs. That's what it should be. I'm sick of watching the NHL and sub 500 teams making the playoffs, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
It's true. It's we've talked about this with the seventh seed in the NFL and how was that necessary. The argument,
Pittsburgh Steelers made it in at 7-8-1 or whatever the heck it was, just to get, or well, 8-8-1, just to get absolutely demolition jobbed in their first game by the Bills.
yeah, and the Eagles didn't look any better. They got
Nope.
completely swamped. But I think with that though, it was the argument on the other side being um, for a lot of for those teams and the other teams that didn't make it around them is that it made a lot of Week 18 matchups very interesting because those teams were involved in pretty meaningful games, kind of
Fair.
one across another, which wouldn't have otherwise happened. You wouldn't have given a shit about. You wouldn't even potentially have given a shit about that finale with the Raiders and Chargers, given that whole scenario of how the playoffs worked out if
Fair.
we didn't have that seventh seed. But yeah, ultimately, those teams then play against some real fucking good competition because they're the bottom seed playing against the top seed, essentially, for
Yeah.
that given week. And yeah, they get beat because they were the seventh seed and they played against the two, essentially, or the one.
Um,
So
I would catch 22 that argument with, do you remember the end of last MLB season? Especially in the AL, when in the last day you had the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Mariners.
right,
Two spots on the line, the AL East title and a wild card spot.
yeah,
All four of those teams could have still made it. It was the most fun. I am a Blue Jays fan. Obviously, I'm in Canada. Um, we watched the Blue Jays game. Blue Jays spanked the Orioles. I think they beat them like 11-0. Great. We turned that game in the seventh because the Jays are up 11-0. This game's over. And the Red Sox are losing to the Nationals, which would mean the Blue Jays make the playoffs. It was wild. Nationals end up choking that game away. Red Sox make the playoffs. Blue Jays are out. But it was crazy.
Yeah.
You still get those crazy last days
Oh yeah,
without
yeah, yeah. Of
adding in
course,
more
of
teams.
course. No, you will.
Um,
Yeah, you will.
I hate the fact that, there's a lot of teams who are like, "Oh, yeah, but the Blue Jays were 92 and 70 and missed the playoffs." Good. I want the playoffs to be the absolute best possible teams. Right? You need to be on this level to make the playoffs. You can't be on this level or this level, and you certainly can't be on this level. You got to be on this level to make it.
Right.
And I hate the fact that they expanded. I know it's only to 12, but let's face it, they're not done expanding. But before we know it, it's going to be a 16-team playoff, and the freaking Baltimore Orioles are going to make the playoffs at 82 and 80.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the potential for it is there as far as expanding more. I mean, I would while it's not well, it probably is going to lead to teams that aren't all that exciting. Baseball's been kind of interesting in those series though, in that we have had some pretty miraculous wild card teams be able to come up,
Yeah,
um, and compete and even win pennants. So it can happen. But yeah, yeah. I tended to like the other rules that I was seeing, as
I
far
do like
as
universal DH. I'll say that right now. I think it's about time. Listen, I
yeah
love the novelty of a pitcher coming up and batting, but I think the NL teams who are having pitchers tear their hamstrings running the first base would tell you no,
yeah
just stop it.
and
And the players who tear their hamstrings running the first base because they're pitchers and they don't do that often would tell you no, stop it.
yeah and given that you literally have teams within the same league split half and half between having such a fundamentally changing rule between them.
Yeah,
It's obviously the only league that fucking still had anything like that. The fact that NL and AL played by that drastically of a different rule,
no kidding.
not having pitchers hit
Yeah.
is gonna change a lot of things. Um, yeah, pitchers. I mean, yeah, exactly. Pitchers are working on their pitching. It's going to be fairly ugly for the most part. It was kind of interesting. Some of the NL guys that would come through that actually did have a little bit of a bat. It was always kind of cool to see them being able to actually
Yeah.
produce some offense for their team while they're also starting. But it was so few and far between that, yeah,
I will
it's
say
about time.
though, back in the day when pitchers and people say, "Oh, back in the day pitchers used to hit." Yeah, back in the day they were throwing 80-mile-an-hour spitballs over the plate,
Yeah,
right? Like pitching's different than it was in the 1920s,
right.
right? Guys throw 100-mile-an-hour fastballs and then switch it into a 75-mile-an-hour changeup like that,
Yeah,
right? That's not easy to do. And yeah, it is Otani that you're thinking of.
yeah.
Um, Uh, yeah, you don't need those guys batting anymore. It just doesn't need to be a thing, right? Very specialized cases, I'm sure they'll still have pitchers who bat a la Shohei Otani. But for the most part, no. Pitchers don't need to bat. Let them pitch.
the the other reason why you'll still have pitchers potentially hitting is due to one other rule change that they had. We will no longer in extra inning games. We will no longer have man on second.
Yeah,
Thank fucking God. I don't think
that
anybody's
rule
not happy about
sucked.
that rule coming off.
That
Um,
rule sucked.
if you were not paying attention in baseball recently, they have implemented this fucking rule due to the COVID. Basically, I think it's because how they
Yeah, they
originally
wanted games to
implemented.
end faster.
Exactly, and it's everything's in the trying to save 5 minutes off the end of the game for the league. So they implemented this crap where it would go to extra innings and you would start off with a man on second, a man in scoring position with no outs. Um, sucked.
And
It
yeah,
just
no.
sucks.
If you want to know why this sucked, here's what would usually happen. If you didn't score a run in the top half of in the top half of the 10th, in the bottom half of the 10th, your leadoff guy would come up, bunt, moves your guy up to third. Next guy comes up, sack fly, game over.
Yep.
That
Pretty
was
easy.
all it was.
Yeah, I guys gotta move him
Literally,
over to one base. That's from
this happened so often And it was the worst because you knew, oh shit, my team didn't drive that guy across in the top half of the 10th. Game's over.
Yeah.
Because they're going to come up, bunt, sack fly, game over.
So due to that, we're not going to have such kind of weird endings to our extra inning games. Therefore, might have some longer games as far as extra
Kind of
innings.
missed the 18 inning games.
So
I'm
we're gonna
not
have
going to
some
lie.
we're gonna have some relief pitchers and shit coming off the bench here to swing the bat maybe.
um,
So
my first ever baseball game was actually a 19 inning game between the Blue Jays and the Tigers
Jesus
that I
Christ.
remember. It was so much fun. It was wild.
I think I've
Right?
been
It
to
was
a.
wild.
I've only been to like a 13 inning. And I've gone to a decent amount of baseball games. I don't think I've been
I've
to
only been to
anything
a
beyond a
few.
13.
I've
Yeah.
been to I've been to two baseball games in my life. One was a 19 inning game between the Blue Jays and the Tigers. The other one was a game that we left in the seventh inning because the Blue Jays were down 16-1.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I've been there before too. Fucking. Oh shit. Giants are getting their ass whooped. Yeah. Let's hit the bar.
Beat the traffic, boys.
Yeah.
The problem with beating the traffic is everybody else is trying to beat the traffic, so nobody's beating the traffic. You're just creating the traffic.
Nah, we just find a bar. We just wait our ass out until
You
end of the
you beat
game.
the
And,
traffic by actually sitting in the stadium and watching the rest of the game while everybody
right.
tries to beat the traffic.
Right.
Um, yeah, no, thank God they got rid of that. They also got rid of the 7 inning doubleheaders.
Yes.
That one I could have gone either way on. I got why they did it right. It didn't bother me that much, but I'm also happy that we're just gonna be playing normal baseball again.
Yeah.
We're not creating shinny rules anymore.
That's just it. It is like I'm usually in favor of like, oh yeah, try to like modernize the game up. Don't be stuck in old rules. But those were a couple things that were implemented that like just kind of fundamentally changed things for no
Yeah,
good reason.
the worst. They
Um,
made the games actively worse.
yeah.
The one thing I will say that the owners wanted to implement that they didn't get across, that I'm kind of sad because I would have been interested in it, was the pitching shot clock. I was kind of interested by the idea of a pitcher shot clock where you only, you have 30 seconds after you receive the ball from your catcher to throw your next pitch. Right? There was one element of me that was like, I love the mind games between a pitcher and a pitcher and a hitter though, where he'll just stand there and look at you for 20 seconds and the batter's there like, what's he gonna throw? What's he gonna throw? Oh shit, timeout, timeout. I'm completely out of it now. But I think the shot clock idea that they had wouldn't have been bad, like the pitch clock thing. But that was the only thing that the owners were actually presenting that I was actively in favor for. Right? Banning the shift, I would have hated. I would have hated banning the shift because the idea of banning the shift is just you are telling managers you are too smart for our players to adapt to, so we're just gonna make it so that you can't do that anymore. Right? Like I hate that. You know how you beat the shift? When the team shifts, what you do is you just throw down like a really well timed bunt down the third base line. I think it was Andrelton Simmons last year got a bunt double. Yeah, it was infield and outfield shift. You'd have to play straight up.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, Andrelton Simmons last year got a bunt double because he bunted down the third base line when they were shifting him, and there was just nobody there. Like that's how you beat the shift.
There
You
you
know what they didn't do for the rest of that game on Andrelton Simmons? They didn't shift on him.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I would have hated that. But outside of that, I think the CPA is pretty fine. Like, yeah, the owners win, but it didn't overhaul the game in a bad way. So I'm fine with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it'll overall be good. But to be seen, I think we have spring training starting up the 7th of April. So start to see get back to games. I'm not too sure as far as like how the season actually plays out. Like I know games were getting canceled, so
No, we're playing a full 162.
so it's just gonna get shifted.
They
as
just
far
shifted.
as,
Yeah.
So we'll be
They had
we'll be
talked about
seeing
canceling
baseball
games,
in November easily into yeah, we'll be seeing
No,
baseball
I don't
like,
think it's that bad because the original start date for the season was April 1st. It's now April 7th, so it just moved back a week.
that's
I think
surprising. I
what
thought
they
they lost a lot more games than that. But
No, I think
or
what they
it
ended up
was
doing is they just cut
reported.
spring training in
Yeah.
like half.
Yeah.
Instead of playing like I think it was 18 spring training games, instead of that they were playing like 10.
So teams are going to be a little raw, probably going to see some injuries actually early on as well. That usually is
That's
what
the
happens. You
worry.
start
That is the worry.
start cutting out preseason games and stuff like that. Um,
Um, Couple interesting free agent signings in baseball to talk about if you got a couple seconds for that.
yeah, if you want to hit on
Uh,
that real quick.
yeah, Yusei Kikuchi is getting a 3-year deal to go to the Toronto Blue Jays. I love that deal because it gives us arguably the best rotation in the majors, definitely one of them. When you look at Barrios, Ryu, Kikuchi, Manoa, and I am missing a really big one in there, and now I'm blanking on it. But essentially, we got 5 guys who are all like very good starters. Love that deal for the Blue Jays. Still need a freaking infielder. Uh, that could be an issue, but we'll see how that happens. Andrelton Simmons, I previously mentioned, signed with the Cubs. Clayton Kershaw is back with the Dodgers on a 1-year deal.
Oh, okay.
It was something in the realm of 17 million or something like that. It's a 1-year deal. They get to keep Clayton Kershaw and Carlos Rondon, 2-year deal to the Giants. Good for Carlos Rondon, the best story of the year last year. Um, Gets a pretty decent deal, 2 years, 44 million from the Giants.
Yeah, definitely happy
Um,
about that. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, great deal. Great deal for Rondon. I'm happy for him. I think he'll be a good fit for the Giants. Obviously, if you guys don't know the Carlos Rondon story, he was cut by the White Sox, um, before the start of last season, and then they re-signed him last season. Had an injury early in the season to a pitcher. He comes up and ended up fifth in Cy Young voting. So awesome story for him. Gets paid. I think it's a good move for the Giants, who could really use some starting pitching help. So I think that's a win-win there. And then the Rangers acquired Isaiah Kiner Falefa from the Twins for Mitch Garver. Essentially, their Andrelton Simmons replacement.
And
That's
yeah,
the free agency news so far.
yeah, and I gotta imagine exactly. Given that things just opened up, you're gonna start to see some moves across the board. Pretty kind of cool, like the fact that you're gonna have a lot of action. I think across both leagues as far as the MLB and the NFL. Um,
Yeah, because next week is when free agency opens, right? Next Monday, free
right.
agency opens for the NFL.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think next week is going to be crazy as far as player movement in both leagues,
Right.
as well as NHL trade deadline is 10 days away.
Oh baby. All right. And yeah, might as well. I think that was the last topic I had listed. Um, Obviously, with the NFL season ending, got to start to look to other avenues for sports. Obviously, college is going to be starting up. We talked a little bit. Um, I could continue to talk about a little bit of you got March Madness coming up, but been taking a look a little bit more at little NBA and NHL action. Of course, I'm a homer through and through, so been paying a little bit more attention to my Golden State, good old Dubs, and checking out the Sharks as well. Um, Both teams actually going through a little bit of a little bit of a snag. Warriors going through a bit of a losing streak there, kind of uh, pretty surprisingly. They do have some injuries. They got some guys coming back. Draymond Green being the big one. James Wiseman as well, starting to come back. So those will be a couple key items for them going forward, as they'll be a strong team going into the playoffs as the regular season closes down here. Sharks have been crap, and it's been tough to watch the Sharks this season. The games I have watched, luckily, just did get a win against the Kings. I think they have another game either tonight or tomorrow night. It's kind of a home and a back-to-back series against them.
Yeah,
Um,
they got a game starting in about an hour.
yeah, and I think the Dubs game actually just started. They're playing the Bucks tonight, so that's a fucking great game right there between the Warriors and the Milwaukee Bucks. So those are the two that I've been paying attention to. Obviously, seeing kind of the national news, the shit show that is the Lakers, whole movement between
Oh my god.
Philly and the The Nets.
Yeah,
Um,
the James Harden.
they just played, and that was a hilariously bad game for James Harden, um, getting absolutely rocked by the
Yeah.
Nets. Kyrie Irving, with obviously the mandates for vaccination, kind of like opening up, and he had a hell of a game I know recently. So I've been catching a little bit of that stuff. But anything that you've been catching, I know you've been watching some games lately.
Well, yeah. Obviously, first things first. When we're talking hockey, I am an Oilers fan through and through. I bleed the copper and blue. Um, I've been happy with what Jay Woodcroft's done since coming in as a head coach, despite the fact that he is working with the shell of what should have been a good team, thanks to our uh, our know nothing general manager who had the second most cap space in the NHL and managed to make our team actively worse. Impressive work, really, by
Yeah,
him.
there.
Very impressive by Ken Holland to have a lot of cap space and make your team actively worse. It's hard to do. Um, we're trying. It's I think it's going to be tough for the Oilers to make the playoffs this year. The Knights are really coming on. Obviously, they got Jack Eichel back in the lineup now, and they're the talent's there for the Knights. I think the Knights are going to be in. I think the Flames are fine. The Kings are really surprising me this year.
Yeah,
I did not think the LA Kings were going to be as good as they are.
yeah,
Um, So I think those are probably going to be your three teams, and then the others are going to have to fight for a wild card. It's going to be tough with the Stars and Predators also playing pretty well. So I think we're probably going to finish on the outside looking in, but I'd love to see it. If Ken Holland keeps his job at the end of the season, I am going to throw a fit. Beyond that, the uh, so I am in a family of Toronto Maple Leafs fans. Is the other thing that happens in my life. Obviously, my mom and dad are both Leafs fans. Uh, their goaltending recently has been fascinating to watch. In that, through the first 2 months of the season, the best goaltender in the NHL by far was Jack Campbell. Uh, wasn't even close. Since January 1st, no team has a worse save percentage in the NHL than the Toronto Maple Leafs. All of a sudden, their goalies cannot stop pucks, and this is a team that if you follow anything about the NHL, you know the Leafs have not won a playoff series in almost 10 years now, and they have made the playoffs a lot recently, and they lose in the first round a lot recently, and another first round exit could be era defining for this team. That could be the end of this core as we know it. That could be the Leafs looking to trade guys out. So I think going into the deadline, the Leafs are a very fascinating team. Do they stick with the goaltending they have, which has been the worst in the NHL since the turn of the calendar? Or do they look to make a move? There are a couple goaltenders out there who could be had, who could help. Obviously, the big one being Marc-Andre Fleury. Uh, I was hoping Fleury would go to a team with similar goaltending issues, maybe little bit to the west of Toronto, a few thousand kilometers to the west. Um, but they're going to be interesting players because if you're a goaltender on a bad team right now, you probably want to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
hmm,
It's the easiest job in the world right now. This is a team that's scoring like 6 goals a game and still losing. Like
yeah.
all you got to do is go in there and like not be the worst goalie humanly possible, and you're probably going to win yourself some games. It's a pretty easy job right now. But I think for the Leafs, they have got to get into first place in the Atlantic. If you finish second or third and you have to play Tampa Bay or Florida, with your bad heebie-jeebies you got going on with that team, I don't love their chances.
Right. Yeah, that Atlantic is pretty dense. I mean,
Well,
uh,
it's top heavy, but
yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, as far as the
Yeah.
the teams that are going to make the playoffs, um, and the ones that you're kind of directly competing against to hopefully not have to play against.
Yeah, you do not want the Lightning or Panthers.
Yeah.
You just don't. And Boston's been coming on recently. And now all of a sudden, the Leafs got to look behind them as well as ahead of them, and it's a bit of a dicey situation for them right now. But again, you play in the Atlantic Division, which means you've got a lot of games against the Red Wings, Senators, Sabres, and Canadians, who might be the four worst teams in the
Right.
NHL.
I mean, so for me, and this is like, this is not surprising because I'm usually I'm a second half of the season kind of guy when it comes to pretty much anything outside the NFL. So maybe not catching the kind of early happenings, but when I take a look at the standings, then obviously you got your former Stanley Cup winners in Tampa Bay, so no surprise seeing them doing fairly well. Florida, I feel like, is definitely a surprise. I gotta imagine playing as well as they are, but you're saying not. But how about the Carolina fucking Hurricanes? Is that
That is a surprise.
that's the big surprise, and that's the one that
That is
really pops off the board to me. As good
So
as
the
Florida's
Carolina
been,
Hurricanes, definitely a surprise. Not because they're necessarily a bad team. I think everybody thought they were going to be decent, right? Obviously, they were a playoff team last year. Uh, but the thing with the Hurricanes is that Metropolitan Division is probably the hardest one in the NHL. Uh, don't look at the points of this because it's kind of unfair comparing the points of the Metro and the Atlantic. You just play the Metro more.
right?
There's legitimately 6 teams in the Metro who are playoff caliber. And I would argue the New Jersey Devils would be really close in any other division. The Flyers have systemic issues that we'll just leave alone with the fact that anybody who plays a net in Philadelphia dies a death since Ron Hextall. So, but yeah, no, the Hurricanes go into the Metropolitan Division, probably the toughest division in hockey, top to bottom, full of killers, full of good teams, and they're just blowing teams out. Like, it's not even contests a lot of nights. They have this weird mix of young talent and veterans, right? It's Frederick Anderson, former Leafs goalie, who I'm sure there's a lot of Leafs fans right now are wishing was back there, is playing out of his goddamn mind. Ethan Bear, I miss you in Edmonton. Please come back. Is developed another level beyond where he was even in Edmonton when he was one of our top four guys. Um, they got Kokniemi in there. They're overpaying him a little bit, but they could, and because of that, they ended up getting a bit of a discount on him long term. I think he just recently signed an extension there for 4.4 million a season. That's an absolute steal on Jesperi Kotkaniemi. The 8 million they're paying him this season, a lot of an overpay, but long term you get a bit of a discount on him. You take that every day. Sebastian Aho's built differently than most people. Um, and yeah, your backup goaltender in Carolina is Antti Ranta, who on most Antti Ranta could unironically be one of the top half goalies in the NHL if you were to list every team by starter. Right? Like if Antti Ranta was a starter on any other team, you would put him in the top half of the NHL. This guy's their backup. They're they've managed to do this while still being $9 million under the salary cap going into the trade deadline. They can add
Yeah.
freely. This Hurricanes team is the scariest team in the NHL, followed very closely by the New York Rangers. I will say that right now. There is no team going into the playoffs who wants to play the New York Rangers. Igor Shesterkin is built different in net. That dude's an absolute freak. And people panicked because he had a couple bad games. Don't panic. It's an 82 game season. Guys are going to have bad games. It's going to happen. Um, the Rangers have this unbelievable group of wingers on their team who at any point can get hot and score a bunch of goals. They have the best goaltender in the NHL right now. In my opinion, if the Hart Trophy were actually about who the most valuable player to their team is and not about who scores the most points, Igor Shesterkin would win it hands down. Not even a question.
Hmm.
Adam Fox is an absolute elite defenseman. They have Keandre Miller, who's turning out pretty good for them. They're just the Rangers are a scary team. But right now, I just don't see how anybody can touch the Canes. And that is a good point. Best defensive corps in the NHL, probably. Uh, Anybody who they play on this defense turns money. Ethan Bear has been absolute money. Tony DeAngelo's a scumbag of a human being, but he's a very good NHL player. Um, they have Brady Skage and Jacob Slavin. Ian Cole sometimes can't even get into the goddamn team because they have so much depth on it. Like the Hurricanes are unbelievably good.
Hmm.
Um, since we've been spending a lot of time in the East, really quickly, teams to look out for in the West. Uh, Outside of obviously the Colorado Avalanche,
Right.
who
Yeah.
are also in their own right a very good hockey team. Um, the Calgary Flames have been very good. I will say though, Daryl Sutter teams in the past have had a tendency to burn out in the playoffs. Daryl Sutter expects his teams to play very high pace, high quantity hockey. You hit a lot, you're moving quick, you're everything happens quickly. Teams that Daryl Sutter has run, outside of a couple of really good Los Angeles King teams who were just stacked to the gills in talent, have burnt out in the playoffs. I don't know if that's going to be the Flames. I hope it'll be the Flames because fuck the Flames. But that is something to look out for. I don't like looking past the Vegas Golden Knights right now.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, they just got Jack Eichel back. They're just starting to integrate Jack Eichel into that team. The the talent's there, the goaltending's there, which is you mentioned with a lot of these, you notice with a lot of these teams I'm mentioning their goaltending. Goaltending wins you 9/10 of your playoffs
Oh
games,
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
right?
you're
For people who don't know hockey maybe that well,
yeah.
if you get a hot goaltender in the playoffs, you're going somewhere.
I have you know, maybe not as far as the day to day, paying attention to that sort of thing, but I have been a pretty diehard Sharks fan in the past. We have had record breaking regular season teams that have just gone absolutely befuddled in the playoffs because they run into a goddamn brick wall on the other side that just doesn't let anything past. Hot goaltender in the playoffs is what you want. You're starting to get toward, the latter part of the season here. The home stretch of the last 20-ish games for a lot of these teams. This is when you're going to start to see, those teams you brought up, a Boston Bruins, that sort of thing. A team that's really getting hot right now. Last 10 games, you're talking about 8 wins and one
One
regulation loss,
regulation, yeah,
and overtime. Like
and they're
teams
up
like
2-1 on
that
the Coyotes right now too.
that have had even potentially bad goaltending through this season, it's probably lost in some games. If their guy gets hot right now, and they're getting into the playoffs, there doesn't matter what seed you are. And I think Vegas very much the same way. This is a team that has been a little dinged up right through this season,
Yeah,
and
very much so.
they haven't been playing great as of late, but they've been hanging in there. Obviously, they're still third in that Pacific, and it's not going to take much for them to kind of flip the trigger back to the other side, and they're going to be in that play. They're going to be in those playoffs, and that's not going to be a team that I don't care if you're the second, third seed, you're potentially facing them. You do not want to see that Vegas Golden
Nope.
Knights team.
And laid back does bring up a good point. The Canadians last year are the prime example of this, right? They were the last team
Yeah.
in the play-in tournament. In a regular season, they are not making the playoffs. 12th place, not getting you in. They get in. And then all of a sudden, Carey Price becomes prime 2008 Carey Price. Game over. The Canadians are making that run,
Right.
right? What I will say with Boston that should scare people is for most of the season, Linus Olmark had been their guy. Recently, they've been going with young Jeremy Swayman. And it seems like Jeremy Swayman has really taken the reins in that net. He has been very good recently. He has not been given up a lot. And so if you're looking at reasons why the Bruins have caught fire recently, and you look and you see Jeremy Swayman's the reason, and you recognize that now the Bruins have some goaltending, that could potentially be a scary team. And
Yeah.
again, especially as I mentioned, the Toronto Maple Leafs being a prime example of the opposite being true. They're outscoring teams when they're winning right now.
Right.
The last time they didn't give up 5 goals in a game was February 24th.
I mean, I think
It,
they have by far one of the best differentials in the league, and they're third,
yeah,
right? In
yeah.
their
But like I
division.
said, February 24th, almost 3 weeks ago, was the last time the Leafs played a game where they did not allow 5 goals. Since then, they won 10-7, won 6-5, lost 5-1, lost 6-4, won 5-4. So, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'll knock it down to 4 goals for
four.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus Christ.
Won 6-5, lost 5-4.
Yeah.
This team cannot keep pucks out of their net right now.
It's
And
and offense in general, right? I think
yeah,
that's what's really been kicking the shit out of the Sharks this whole season is the goalie play hasn't even been that bad necessarily.
Reimer's been actually really good for them this year.
They just literally let everything past them, and when your goalie's taking on 30, 40 shots a fucking
Yeah,
night, some are going to get through, and when your offense is garbage, you're going to lose a lot of games. A lot of games you should have probably been in, you should have probably won. Yeah, you see it on the other side. It's you're just gonna do yourself so much of a favor if you're just able to keep that around, your 20-ish shots a game. You're helping yourself out so much more. You're helping goalie out,
yeah,
and it's just the law of averages. They're only gonna be able to stop so much.
yeah. Reimer had been really good for the Sharks this year, and he actually recently got hurt, and that's been another thing that's been hurting the
He did,
Sharks a
yeah,
lot recently,
yeah.
is not having James Reimer. But he had been really good for the Sharks this year, and was one of the worst goalies in the league as far as goals for right, like they just weren't scoring for him.
Yeah.
You can see it by the fact that their goals against is only 182, right? Like right around league average, right? The really bad teams in the league are well into the 200s at this point,
Exactly.
and the Sharks are at 182. That should usually keep you in that mix for the playoffs. The problem is they've only scored 149 goals this season,
Exactly. I've
right? And
I've
that,
I've seen on Twitter literally posted that the Sharks are the most boring team to watch in this league. And as a guy who's been watching a decent amount of Sharks game lately, it's hard for me to get super
yeah,
pumped about anything they're doing right now. Like
no, that's fair.
it's really
Um,
man.
yeah. I'll really quickly touch on the NBA since
Yeah.
obviously I went on a bit of an NHL thing there, but
Hey.
my Raptors. I do need to talk about my Raptors
Oh
real quick
yeah, yeah, and that's right.
because this was a team that was not supposed to be good this year. They're young, they're rebuilding, they're retooling, yada yada yada. Uh
Watch
oh
this
my God,
highlight.
did Song Yadong just starch Marlon Moraes?
I think he did. Yeah,
I
watch
was
this highlight.
actually gonna mention before this fight started. Watch out for Song Yadong. This kid is a
Ooh
absolute
wee.
oh
Ooh
Jesus, that
wee.
right uppercut.
I like it. Dangity
Man,
dangity.
absolutely starched him.
Like not quite up, little angle into that.
It's that upper cross, right? It's that upper cross he threw in there.
Oh man, he perfect angle.
Um Beautiful. Uh yeah, no. The Toronto Raptors are a young team, right? They don't have a true out and out superstar. Fred VanVleet's turning into one, but I don't think he's that quite yet. Um And they went through a bit of a rough stretch not too long ago where they lost to the Magic, they lost to the Cavs. Everybody's like, okay, they're coming back down to earth. Then they go out and back-to-back wins over the Spurs and the Suns. Uh, this team doesn't go away. I really like this Toronto Raptors team, and I think they're a team that especially if they can avoid that play-in tournament, if they can get straight into the playoffs. By the way, that play-in tournament fucking sucks. I hate that fucking play-in
What
tournament
a
so much.
structure that fucking tourney is, isn't it?
The dumbest thing ever. Like again, it's literally there so that we can get more playoff games. We need
Yeah.
more playoff games. The 10 seed in the East right now is the Atlanta Hawks at
Yeah.
32 and 34. In the West, it's the Pelicans at 27 and 40.
Yeah.
Playoff teams, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, New Orleans. It's crazy to see them with the potential to actually fucking make it in some way, shape, or form,
You,
and that's all it takes. It just takes 2 games,
you know
just
what's
2 games, and they can somehow be a team that
you know
moves
what's
on.
really crazy? The 20 and 46 Thunder are not out of this conversation yet. They are 6.5 games back of a playoff spot right now.
6.5 with how many to go? We got
I think about 20.
yeah. They've played 66 so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
How on earth at
That's crazy.
20 and
It's crazy.
46
Yeah.
are you in a playoff race?
You're in the fucking cellar. You should not be in any conversation, but there you are. And the
The
thing
East is at
is,
least a little bit better
right.
because the Hawks are close to 500, the Hornets are close to 500, right? Like they're at least close to 500, right? And then as you get up towards the upper edge of it, right, the Raptors are 36 and 30. They're chasing the Cavaliers for that last spot who are 38 and 28 and the Celtics are 41 and 27. Like there's good teams at the 27 and 40
Yeah. And
playoffs?
you know who this has to really annoy? It has to annoy your just right there at the top of those end teams. So your Toronto Raptors right there at a
Who would
36 and 30 are getting absolutely screwed because they have to play these stupid ass games.
who would be comfortably a playoff team
The
right now,
Minnesota
right? Like
Timberwolves at 38 and 30 for some reason has their playoff position compromised because they have to play these stupid
yeah,
fucking playing
like
games.
36 and 30 Raptors right now would be 4 games ahead of the Hornets in ninth, who are 2 games below 500, and feeling pretty comfortable and looking to move up into the table and, try to get into that 5-6 spot and maybe avoid a tougher first round matchup. Now they're looking at this going, we need to get up in that 5-6 spot to avoid this stupid play-in tournament and having to play the damn Atlanta Hawks, who are going to finish 4 or 5 games below 500 and are somehow in this tournament.
Yeah.
And that's not even counting the poor damn Timberwolves, who, like you mentioned, 38 and 30, comfortably in the playoffs. They're looking at this play-in thing going, we have to play the 27 and 40 Pelicans
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Yeah. The one thing I will say for the Hawks, at least they are they're fairly competitive there as far as their differential is concerned.
That's what I
They're
said.
actually
Like, the
kind
East,
of
it's not as bad.
yeah.
They're around 500. The
I
they play pretty
expect
well overall.
I expect Atlanta to jump Charlotte for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah.
probably. The Hawks are not a bad team at all, right? And you're right. The East is not as bad as the West, right? Because whoever makes it is going to be right around 500, maybe a game or two below 500. Do I love that? No. Am I okay with it? Sure. You know what I'm not okay with? 27 and 40 playoff teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Lakers are 29 and 37 right now and comfortably feeling fine that they're going to be in the stupid play-in tournament.
Yeah. Yep.
They're 8 games below 500 and they're feeling good. They're like, yeah, no, we're going to make it in. And then once we make it in, we're going to play the Clippers in the first round. Are you kidding me? They're the choke artists. We're going to beat them. We're going to be freaking... Oh my God, what's the record going to be like? 36 and 48. We're going to be in the playoffs, baby.
Yeah. I will
Woo!
I will say the Lakers are just because they're Lakers, for as bad as they've been. God, those odds suck. They are plus 6,600 to win the championship. It should be so much worse for a 29 and 37 team, but they're the fucking Lakers, so they're gonna get that extra little bump.
Hold on. With LeBron and Russ and AD, they got Carmelo on that team. When the released player free agency starts, they're gonna get a couple guys in there.
But you know as much as I do, if this was normal playoff land,
They'd be plus
they're
22,000.
and they're 6 wins out of fucking the playoffs right now. They're not even close
Oh
to
yeah,
making the
no.
playoffs. They wouldn't even
It,
get anything close to
in a
these
league
odds.
that makes sense, the Lakers aren't even like those odds are quadrupled because the Lakers aren't even going to come close to the playoffs. Their
Brooklyn,
winning percentage is 439.
Brooklyn, Brooklyn is plus 550 to win the championship. They are the best odds in the strongest odds in the East. They are the fucking 8 seed.
I feel like the Bulls are not getting enough love in the East, but that's just me. I know they've wobbled a little bit recently, but that Bulls team's freaking good. But yeah, that play-in tournament is a joke.
Brooklyn is surrounded by teams that are plus 10,000 or worse odds, and somehow they have a plus 550.
Well, if they
They are
want to,
tied for the second
yeah,
best odds with Golden State to win the championship. The Suns are the only ones better. That's absurd. That just kind of shows a lack of. It's a shit show in the NBA.
well,
it's a
you know what it
it's a
really tells you about the
mess.
NBA? The regular season means nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about a little bit to the MLB's extent. I think basketball is in the same realm. I think the NHL is honestly in the same realm. Why the fuck are you playing so many games at this point?
Yeah,
What's
yeah,
what's the real purpose here?
yeah.
Except for injuries and some big shifts. It really some of this stuff matters so little as it
You
comes
know
down
what
to
would
it.
be really cool, but they would never do it because of the money.
Yeah.
If you if you only played your conference in a given season, cut the games in half. You
Hmm.
only play the teams in your conference. Then the NBA
Uh,
championship is the best team from each conference who have never seen each other this year. You have no
mm,
idea how they stack up against each other.
uh, yeah, I suppose there's some to that. I think that I
It'll
mean
it'll never happen because of the
no.
money.
Yeah. I
But
It is an interesting thought. I mean, the kind of cool thing, and I just thought about that as we were talking about it. The one thing that is kind of cool about the NBA is every single team plays each other at least twice, right? So everybody
yes,
has a home and away.
same thing with the NHL.
Yeah. So I guess you start adding all those in, and then you want to obviously have more games probably against your division opponents,
That's
then
what
your
ends up happening,
conference, and then
right?
your non-conference. So it
Yeah.
starts to add up pretty quickly there. But yeah, that's an interesting idea of you won't see your
You'll
opponent
never
for the
know,
championship.
right? It'd be such a cool
I
like
did.
the NBA finals would be must-watch TV
Oh.
because you wouldn't know, right? Like, yeah, we think on paper the Warriors, for example, if they got out of the West, are better than the Heat. But we haven't seen them play each other yet this year. We have no idea how they match up. What if the Heat defensively can just shut down the Warriors, right? We would have no idea because we've never seen it.
I guess the opposite side of that coin, though, is that these seasons are so goddamn long that if the Warriors and the
Probably
Heat
haven't seen it
were,
anyways.
yeah, if the Warriors and Heat played in the first half of the season, 20 games in, and now you're at game 80 something or whatever, or into the
Yeah.
90s, obviously, when you're talking about the playoffs, that's an entirely different team, anyways,
Yeah.
from
I,
60
I
games,
always
70 games ago, right? So,
uh so my brother-in-law, also a Leafs fan, by the way. I'm surrounded by Leafs fans.
sorry.
Every time the Leafs beat the Oilers, which is a lot, because again, our GM is essentially like I'm pretty sure if we took my next door neighbor's dog and had it run the Oilers and like we just put contracts in front of him or whatever he put his paw on, that's the player we signed,
Oh, yeah.
would it be a better team?
It'd be like
Would
that
be a better
octopus
team.
or something. Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
pretty
oh,
much.
100%.
Yeah.
Get like a traveling circus to come around and like have like the spinning board with the knife throwers and just put a bunch of contracts on the board and whichever knife he hits.
You just change your name to that. It could be the Edmonton Traveling Circus instead of the Oilers.
um, but every time the Leafs beat the Oilers, he sends me a thing on Facebook that has the Toronto Maple Leafs fan group. And he doesn't say anything to it. It's just the link to the Toronto Maple Leafs fan group, which is, I will admit, a pretty good shithousery play.
Yeah,
I like it. It's a 10 on 10 shithousery play.
scumbag for
But
sure. But yeah.
But in my head, I'm always thinking like, bro, it's game 16 of the regular season.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck?
Right. Yeah.
And that's just the way it is with the NBA, the NHL, MLB, right? Like, sure, if you know, if especially with the MLB, right? Because they play like uh, Jays are like 11 in the morning, nothing else is on. Yeah, I'll watch the Blue Jays game,
Right.
right? Why not? I'm not doing anything else. But like, man, I could give a shit about game 38 of the NBA season, right?
Yeah.
And that is a problem, right? I but they need their money.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's always where it lines up too. It's like you talk about the first half of NHL NBA
Yeah.
seasons. I'm in football mode, baby.
Hmm.
Niners are playing. Sorry, I'm getting ramped up the entire week for Niners.
Yeah.
I'm watching how the practices are going. I'm watching our injury reports. Who's playing?
Yep.
What's the other team looking like? They made any moves? Like, so it's a wash for me in football seasons. So they already lose me for half that season, anyways. I'm not going to start paying attention until after. And they don't even get me fucking started on baseball. Like, I can't. There's no fucking way I
No.
give a shit about the first 80 games of that fucking season
No.
because you got 160. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. So I'll give a shit about my Giants when it starts becoming games that really fucking matter.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's
I'm with you on
ultimately what
that.
it's going to come down to.
Like I said, I will watch it because I love sports and like, yeah,
Yeah,
I got nothing else on. I'm fucking watching an Oilers game. Why not?
sure. I'll try to put it on
But
the background. Yeah, yeah, if I
yeah,
can.
but like if you think I give a shit that we lost 4-2 to the Leafs in game 16 of the regular season, you've got another thing coming, buddy, cuz
Miss me
I
with that
don't.
shit. Yeah, yeah.
Cuz I don't.
There's too many goddamn things going on, and especially like a year like this one too. I think for both of us, I don't think enough watched a lot of Olympics
Yeah.
this season
Oh,
as well.
I watched a ton of
So
Olympics.
that was a lot of fun, and like and obviously you're not gonna get that every year because
No.
it's the fucking Olympics, and yeah, so you're keeping up with your NFL teams, especially if you got a team that's going through the playoffs, as my Niners were, and the
Yeah.
fucking just the nerve wracking situations that they had put themselves in week in
Easier
week
for me
out.
being a Falcons fan. We never make the
You can move
playoffs.
on. Yeah, yeah.
There was like 1 year. There was 1 year. We all remember. Let's not bring up scores or anything like that. I know the numbers. I remember.
Yeah. I mean, hey, right there with you with dropping a Super Bowl win.
Home.
That was kind of in your pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Twice, actually.
Um.
Twice recently, because you could argue we probably should have the Ravens, too. Given by the end of that. Early on, it was
Yeah, but
looking really
God
fucking bad.
decided you don't get to beat the Ravens.
No, God decided we did because it made the power go out, and
Oh, that's right. God tried to make you beat the
that whole
Ravens.
halftime, it was an
Yeah,
entirely different game. That second half,
that's right. You were behind before the lights went out.
28, like not 28-3 bad, but close, really fucking
Yeah, no.
close.
God decided He wanted you to beat
That
the
game was
Ravens, and
fucking
you still
ugly.
couldn't do
I
it.
was sad drinking by halftime, and then we rally back. Do you understand the energy that's coming through? And I was with a bunch of my old fucking high school friends and shit like that. It was getting to enormous levels of hype because
Oh,
it was just the whole way back, and all
28
of a
to
sudden
3.
we're right there. And that
28-3. I was the most obnoxious person on the earth
yeah
because
yeah
I have a uncle-in-law who's a Tom Brady guy, and my dad's a Cowboys fan, and we had eliminated the Cowboys in the previous round, so he wanted the Falcons to lose, and everybody wanted the Falcons to lose, and we're up 28-3, and I'm basking in it, baby. I'm basking in it.
yeah
And then the rest of that game happened, and we're just not going to talk about it.
right.
But yeah, no, next year in November, like if the NHL and NBA thinks I give a shit about Game 6 while the World Cup's happening, wrong.
Yeah. We're gonna have that to contend with, and I suppose
Wrong.
we'll get that. we're starting to get some exposure into some of the footy as well, so I'm sure that'll hit in some of our future episodes here. Anything else? Actually, we should probably
Yeah,
start wrapping up. Anything else you want to hit on for this episode? It's been good. We've been off for a couple weeks here, so it's been good. We had quite a lot of stuff to cover this week. Anything else you want to hit on before we call it?
just really quickly for people who might be wanting to look out for some college basketball games to look out for over the next couple days.
That's right.
Virginia Tech is playing Duke right now and winning. Virginia Tech making the ACC final. They don't even need to win the ACC final. They make the ACC final, and somebody's going to be really sad in the bracket because they are a bubble team right now that is on the outside looking in. In about an hour or so from when we're recording this, so Saturday, Abilene Christian is not even close to the tournament. They are in the WAC final against New Mexico State, which could make more teams very sad. And then tomorrow, Texas A&M playing Tennessee in the SEC tournament final. Texas A&M probably needs to win that game if they want to make the tournament. They would be an automatic and again make somebody else very sad, as well as Richmond and Davidson. Similar scenario there. Richmond wins and somebody gets sad. There is a lot of potential for sad teams. In particular, teams named Xavier. But I have no sympathy for Xavier. You lost 9 of your last 10 games. That's on you.
Damn. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Xavier. You want to make the NCAA tournament? Win half of those. Go 5-5 down the stretch and you're clean. We're not even having this conversation. You want to lose 9 of your last 10? Enjoy missing the tournament.
Man. Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing, by the way, to North Texas, who had won 16 games in a row at one point and are going to miss the tournament. That's also on you.
It's funny how massive March Madness is and how many teams get in there, obviously, but how many close calls and teams that have some pretty goddamn good records by the end of it that are just going to be on the outside looking in, right? The bubble bursts on them, and you got to perform. You got to win. You got to win your conference for some of these guys.
So that's the thing, right? Like, a lot of people hear my rant about the freaking play-in tournament and how many teams are making the playoffs in the NBA and go, well, why don't you have the same problem with March Madness? Dude, there's like 320 teams in college basketball. The amount of teams that actually make the playoffs is surprisingly small comparatively. Right? Like, if you go simply by percentages of teams that make the playoffs, it's surprisingly small.
Yeah. I mean, it starts to become a little bit more comparable to other leagues. You're talking about, with that many teams, you're talking about 64 making it, a fifth, right? So, not outside the realms for a lot of leagues at this point. I mean, you're talking about 14 teams making it in the NFL out of 32.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
So that's a lot. That's a lot more, right? So exactly.
Yeah, the NFL is the only league that I think can really come close to saying like they have the same amount of you need to be elite to make it in. NFL and MLB, right? Obviously, those two have a very small pool of teams that make the playoffs comparatively. But like the NBA with this fucking play-in tournament, 60% of your league makes the playoffs.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Like, NHL has always been 50% of the league. 16 out of the 32 teams make the playoffs. Half of your league makes the playoffs. That is too much. My issue isn't the amount of teams that make the playoffs, but the percentage of teams that make the playoffs.
Exactly.
Right? Because I want my playoffs to be elite. Yeah. Right? So when you have a 300-team league and 64 make the playoffs, that's a pretty good scale. Elite teams are making the playoffs there. You have a 30-team league and 20 make the playoffs, that's a problem. But yeah, no, that's it. Just those couple of games to look out for. I'm not even gonna try to do bracketology or anything like that. I got no experience with that. I will be doing up a bracket, by the way.
Yeah, I might take a hand at it just for the fun of it. We could even do a little comparison, probably.
I was gonna say if you are going to look to do it,
why the fuck not? Basically, my knowledge is going to be pretty limited. I will start taking a look at when the brackets release. I will start taking a look at teams, just kind of get a
Yeah,
little bit of idea. I don't like to go in completely blind, but
but it's March Madness, dude. My
exactly.
mom does a bracket every year. She hadn't watched a college basketball game until she did her first bracket 3 years ago, ever.
So
And
yeah,
now she's like, she loves March Madness. She does the bracket and everything, but she doesn't watch like a single game beforehand. She doesn't look up anything about the teams. When she sees like Davidson or Richmond in there, she goes, "What's their mascot? It's a spider. I don't like spiders. Other team."
exactly. Yeah, sometimes it comes down to that. Good colors.
And by the way, last year my mom had a better winning percentage on her bracket than I did.
She'll
I
probably kick
watch a
my
lot of
ass for
college
sure.
basketball.
Yeah, no, she'll probably
Like I
kick my
watch
ass.
a lot of college
Right.
basketball. This is my point. Oh,
Let's see.
ooh. Ankalaev and Thiago Santos are kind of going at it right now.
Watching.
Sorry, got distracted
Oh, it's all right. No,
there.
I'm watching the same. Um, but yeah, so we got a lot of interesting things on tap coming up. Obviously, we have March Madness coming right up. We have the draft as well coming up. We're
NHL
gonna
trade deadline is 10 days away.
take a look at that. We'll obviously be taking a look at the playoffs as the
Yep.
NBA and NHL start wrapping up here. So we'll be taking a look at a little bit more in depth to how those are going to be playing out. Probably have some predictions, that sort of thing. We'll see how it plays out as far as our schedule. Usually, obviously, tonight being Saturday, not our usual day. We've been Fridays. We'll see how that all shakes out and how often we're getting the podcast going. But this has been awesome. It's been good to get back
Yeah.
after a couple weeks here. A lot of things to talk about. We'll have some more things to talk about coming up in the future. But yeah, I think this will wrap it up here. This has been episode 18 of the Sports Clichés podcast. I am Tapatio J. You could catch us live every Friday, Saturday, or whatever day we decide on this channel right here, twitch.tv/TapatioJ, TAPATIOJ. Or make sure to look us up on YouTube if you want to catch us after the fact on the Sports Clichés YouTube channel. We get everything posted there. Craig doing the work for that. Usually we've had some pretty good opener cards. So they
The
kind of
last one I
they
put up,
pop.
if people haven't seen the last one I put up, that was my pièce de résistance.
Yes.
The Matt Stafford picture of him looking at that girl falling. Go, nah, I gotta go watch Sports Clichés.
Yes. So now we got some good we got some good pop for the opener card there. But yeah, I'm Jay. That's Craig. Thank you all for joining us very much for another episode of Sports Clichés. We'll be back soon talking about March Madness and more. Probably a lot of NFL free agency news, all that sort of thing coming up. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.